Chapter-421-440. Shock. I didn't expect that there is such a layer of identity. Smoker's eyes flashed, he exhaled heavily, and his eyes flashed with a sudden look. Back then, in Rog Town, I actually met that terrifying man. Also, it prevented him from arresting Straw Hat Luffy. In retrospect, everything makes sense. It turned out that the son of that terrible man, even Straw Hat Luffy himself. No wonder he met him in that remote place. All this is no coincidence. Then I can't spare him even more. Smog's face was firm, and white smoke came out of his body. He caught the direction of Straw Hat Luffy and approached quickly, holding the Halu stone weapon in both hands, ready to fight at all times. Since it is Dorig's son, he can't let it go. This guy Carp. Lieutenant General Crane sighed helplessly and shook his head. As an old friend, she can naturally understand the troubles in Carp's heart. A hero of the Navy who has beaten anyone, never been defeated by anyone. However, he lost to his son and grandson. A good hero, a son who was taught, but single-handedly founded the Revolutionary Army with the purpose of overthrowing the world government. And the grandson he taught is even more ironic. Going to sea directly and becoming a pirate is completely contrary to the Navy. 390. This is really ironic. For a hero in the Navy, the hardships in his heart are beyond words. Straw Hat Luffy, Ace's younger brother, has such an amazing history. My darling, the grandson of the hero Garp, the son of the Revolutionary Army Dragon, this is truly incredible. It's just that what makes me strange is the fact that there are 3 generations of a family, but they have different occupations. Grandpa, as a naval hero, and father, as the founder of the Revolutionary Army, chose to go to sea by himself when it was his turn. Quote. The pirates were also full of amazement and said slowly. This is a shocking thing for them. Identity background, no less than Ace. These 2 guys, Ace and his younger brother, simply monopolize a large part of the world. Navy, Revolutionary Army, pirates, etc. Thinking of this, many pirates felt a little emotional. Born to be the 3rd generation of officials, it is a pity that he finally became a pirate. This made them feel some feelings in their hearts. The video worms conveyed all the pictures and sounds to each island. Chambord Islands. Around the huge screen, a group of civilians surrounded it, shocked and dumbfounded. They freeze on the screen without blinking, lips trembling. What's the situation? Straw Hat Luffy has such a great background. This is simply terrifying. Cap's grandson, Dorig's son, this. A young man said bluntly with a look of horror on his face. It's really shocking. Isn't this kind of identity walking sideways on the sea? In the Navy, there is the invincible hero Garp as a grandfather. The founder of the Revolutionary Army, Dorag, the most vicious criminal in the world, is still his father. The identity of this Straw Hat boy is really speechless. My God, I seem to have heard something terrible. If I had such an identity, would I need to come out and be a pirate? This family is simply terrible. If it weren't for what happened today, I'm afraid, we don't know this kind of thing at all. This is simply a shocking secret. Big news, hurry up, record all these news, I want the whole world to know this news. This is amazing. Quote. Chapter-421-shock. Shock. And GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. Quote. Countless people made up their minds and said firmly. Looking at the big screen, the words came out of the warring states, and they would not doubt the truth of the matter. As a naval marshal, the warring states period, since he said this in front of the image bugs, it is absolutely well-founded, and it is impossible to make up nonsense. The negative impact on the Navy will only be greater. Marin Van Doe, within the bay. Countless pirates have poured in here, suppressing the Navy for a short time. Even under the attack of the pacifists, BJDB, they still have no intention of backing down. Go! The pirates were completely crazy and shouted loudly. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of battle was very harsh and sharp, echoing around. Fierce battlefield, corpses everywhere. On the deck of the Moby Dick. Whitebeard took a deep breath, jumped up, jumped off the ground, and stood steadily. In the front position, Crocodile looked at Whitebeard with a gloomy face, gritted his teeth and said, Whitebeard, you guy, was it so easy to be hit hard? Boy, what did you say was hit hard? The corners of Whitebeard's mouth moved slightly, and he whispered to himself. I am also human, and I have only one heart. How could it be unscathed when someone pierced the heart? He could already feel that his vitality was draining at a terrifying speed. Not only because of his old age, but also because of a pierced heart. This heavy injury has already been decided, his ending today. It is impossible for him to leave here again, so his face is firm, and some things have been decided. Next, let me take part in this battle. Whitebeard looked at the position of the warring states in front of his eyes and said slowly. Everyone be careful. The face of the warring states on the high platform changed slightly, and he shouted, the most destructive man in the world, he is going crazy. Everyone must be careful. Boom. A pacifist stood in front of Whitebeard and scanned the target directly. Target locked, capture. It opened its mouth, a golden halo flickered around its mouth, and was ready to launch a laser attack. However, Whitebeard's face was calm, a white halo appeared in his hands, and he punched into the air in front of him. Click. The atmosphere cracked. A terrifying shock force hit the pacifists. Boom. A loud bang. Like a kite with a broken string, the pacifist flew upside down for more than 10 meters, rubbing against the ground, and all parts of his body were damaged to varying degrees. Crackling. On its body, bursts of electric light flickered, black smoke gradually emerged, and the light in its eyes gradually restrained and disappeared without a trace. In an instant, it was instantly killed by Whitebeard. A pacifist who beat countless pirates to the point of being unable to fight back. In the hands of Whitebeard, he couldn't even hold a single move. This made many navies' hearts panic. They stared blankly at the white-bearded figure in front of them, feeling a sense of fear in their hearts. This is the power of Whitebeard. Pacifist, killed in one blow, my God. His power is too strong. Quote. The Navy whispered, his eyes couldn't hide the fear, and he kept talking, and his morale suddenly fell into a low ebb, and there were some signs of wanting to retreat. Chapter 422 _ the general is dispatched. Whitebeard finally does it. Aokiji narrowed his eyes slightly and said slowly. Then, it's time for us to move out. Akainu stood up from the chair, the corners of his mouth moved slightly, said lightly. Akainu, it's up to you. Of Akainu, his face was calm, and he said directly. The plan will never end because of the appearance of Whitebeard. It was only a matter of time before Whitebeard had to do something, and now that Whitebeard had been seriously injured, the pressure on them could be relieved a lot. So, now should be the time to use the power of the general. As for those Chiwahai who just came here to pass the scene, he would not let him think that Chiwahai would use all his strength to help them deal with Whitebeard. With the exception of Bartholomew, the other Kibukai have their own plans, and it is impossible to risk their own lives for the sake of the Navy. Go. Sengoku looked at the Whitebeard in front of him and said lightly. Yeah. Akainu walked forward, his fists turned into a mass of magma, a scorching hot breath filled the air, steaming hot, white smoke wafting, and the surrounding area could feel this extremely high temperature. The magma dripped onto the ground, bringing about that high temperature, which almost made people afraid to approach. Aokiji, in particular, walked away several steps unconsciously. He was emitting an icy breath all over his body, and he was very unhappy when he was close to such a high-temperature magma. Meteor volcano. The magma emerged from the red dog's fists, turned into fists, and continuously rushed to the position of the sky. The bright light attracted the attention of countless people. The general is about to take action, what kind of trick is this? Look, his attack is gone. A pirate pointed to the sky, his face full of horror, and he shouted loudly. The attacks of Akainu's hands bombarding the sky all disappeared without a trace, and it was completely impossible to find traces. Silence. The battlefield fell into an eerie silence. The Navy and pacifists have already withdrawn from the battlefield unconsciously. In the area in front, there is only a large area of pirates left, a large area covered with darkness, with no end in sight. Even now, there are still a lot of pirates left, too many to count. Boom. A dull sound came from the sky, echoing in people's ears. Everyone looked up. I see. A large piece of magma, turned into a fist, is constantly appearing in people's eyes, a little bit of bright light, like starlight, flickering constantly. Everyone was stunned, especially the many pirates, who couldn't believe what they were seeing. This is... A pirate's lips trembled, his eyes couldn't hide the horror, and he lost his voice. My God, it's too much. Their throats were dry, looking at the giant magma fists that kept falling in the sky, their hearts throbbed, and a sense of fear appeared on their faces. Escape. In an instant, all the pirates shouted loudly. Just like roaring ants, madly swinging left and right in the battlefield. Boom. The magma in the sky fell and fell to the ground. A loud sound came out, and the ground trembled and cracked. Under this terrifying attack, all the ice cubes vanished and shattered into pieces. Whoa! A layer of flames ignited on the sea surface, the magma submerged into the sea, and the sea boiled and boiled. The scene was extremely terrifying. Ah! Countless pirates cried out loudly. Chapter 422 _ The general is dispatched. Countless pirates cried out loudly. The force of the lava smashed the surrounding earth to pieces. A group of pirates were bombarded by this force, and the corpses were all over the place, cracking a trail of traces. My arm, my arm. This damn red dog, run away. They frantically dodged the attack. But helplessly, the scope of this attack is too broad, and they are completely covered within the scope. No matter where they escape, they will launch these terrifying magma attacks. The high platform, Warring States looked at the scene in front of him, his eyes flickered, and he said, this time, after destroying the ice cubes, you won't be able to escape so easily. Boom. Whitebeard was expressionless and looked forward quietly. Seeing the group of pirates bombed by magma, his expression became more and more gloomy. A stream of magma blasted past and hit the Moby Dick. A raging fire, burning up. I'm sorry, old friend. The corners of Bybird's mouth moved slightly, thinking silently in his heart. A ship that has been with him for decades has finally come to an end today. It is impossible for him to have no feelings for the Moby Dick. Carrying him and his sons for decades, the credit of this ship is naturally not ordinary. It's just that I am here today to witness the destruction of this ship with my own eyes. His mood is indescribable, some are sad, some are gratified, some are lamented, and his mood is quite complicated. However, he did not prevent the destruction of the Moby Dick, because he had also decided to keep himself here forever. His heart was pierced, and his own body couldn't support it for long. Then, use the remaining time to work hard for an infinite future. For their children. Thinking of this, Whitebeard's face became firm. Looking at the battlefield ahead, he took a deep breath, his eyes twinkled, and his fists were covered with a white halo. In the battlefield. Boom. Countless magma cracked the ground, and the flames burned and burned on the ground. A layer of raging fire burned on the bodies of a group of pirates, burning them beyond recognition, and the heart-piercing pain enveloped the whole body. Ah, damn it. A pirate was burned all over, screaming in pain, and his expression was extremely painful. Fire out. The rest of the pirates rushed over and put out the flames with their bodies. Unfortunately, the pirate was still burned to death, his whole body turned black, and his face could not be seen at all. Navy. A group of pirates stared at Akainu in front of them, and shouted angrily. Boom. The attack of the magma has not stopped, and the dazzling magma slammed on the ground, shaking the earth, and a piece of ice was directly melted into seawater. The entire sea was boiling due to the presence of the magma, and bursts of heat came out. The scalding hot seawater directly scalded some pirates. Akainu, the bloody bastard. The pirates gritted their teeth and stared viciously at the Akainu in front of them. They were extremely angry, but there was nothing to do. The gap between the two sides is too great. No matter how angry they are, it won't help. Red Dog. Diamond Yoja turned into a diamond, but resisted the attack of the magma, but his body was not very good, his face was gloomy, and he looked at the pirates who fell around. These are his brothers. However, it was so easily killed by Akainu. This is the cruelty of war. Chapter 423-The war is heating up. Captain. A dying pirate, looking at Diamond Yoja, showed a smile, his eyes were firm, and he could not see the slightest regret. Even before dying. Good job. Joes moved his lips slightly, gritted his teeth, and nodded. The luckiest thing in my life is that I met Captain. You joined the Whitebeard pirates, and became my father's son. The pirate laughed, coughed, and vomited blood. Stop talking, you'll be fine. Diamond Yoja's eyes were a little wet, and he said hurriedly. Captain, I know my own situation, you don't need to say more. Finally, I have a request, you must help me to complete it. The pirate looked at Diamond Yoja with a firm face and said. You said. Diamond Yoja nodded and said. Rescue, Captain Ace. Hi, 963, Thief spoke with difficulty and said slowly. After he finished speaking, he closed his eyes slightly and died directly. Silence. Diamond Yoja fell into silence, took a last look at the corpse, and nodded. Don't worry, this is also our goal, and we will definitely accomplish it. He turned his head, looked at the Navy crowd in front, gritted his teeth, rushed into the Navy crowd frantically, and launched endless killings. Puff, puff, puff. One by one the Navy was beaten in the head by his punch. Go to hell. Diamond Yoja's eyes were red, and all the pirates who blocked him in front of him exploded their heads. Suddenly, a tall and thin figure stood in front of him. Hey, it's not good to be so excited. Aokiji took on a cold breath all over his body, looked at Diamond Yoja, and said lightly. Blue pheasant. Diamond Yoja's face changed slightly, he was unmoved, and he had no intention of retreating. The other side. Above the sky. Marco turned into a phoenix and rushed to the position on the execution platform in an instant. Not good. Sengoku's expression changed slightly, looking at Marco's movements, his expression showed a bit of anxiety. If Marco is approached, Ace will be freed soon. Damn, are all the generals gone? Warring States quickly glanced at the seat on the seat, it was empty, and said. Ace. Marco's eyes flickered, and an excited smile appeared on his face when he saw Ace who was close at hand. At the same time. Every corner of the battlefield, everyone is watching. Ace is about to get out of trouble. Quick, Captain Marco, the front is clear and no one is blocking it. Ace, we can definitely get out of trouble. Yes, we can. Brothers, go ahead and block these navies. Quote. The pirates were boiling with excitement, and shouted loudly. Seeing that Ace was about to get out of trouble, their mood naturally became very excited. Whitebeard's face was expressionless, looking at Marco's movements, his eyes flashed with anticipation. Ace. Even Marco himself thought he could save Ace. But right now, a figure appeared in front of Marco. Boom. An extremely fast fist slammed into Marco's arm, instantly knocking him flying for more than 10 meters, bombarding the ground, and raising bursts of smoke. Cap. Marco stood up embarrassedly, looking at the figure blocking him in front of him, with a heavy heart. That's right. The person standing in front of him is the Navy hero Garp. Chapter 423 _ The war is heating up. The person standing in front of him is the Navy hero Garp. If you want to save people, you must pass my level. Garp was expressionless, sitting on the chair with a gloomy face, looking at the battlefield in front of him, motionless. Immediately, Marco's heart froze. Facing Garp, he would not blindly believe that he had the strength to shake the opponent. The whole place fell silent. Cap guy. Whitebeard narrowed his eyes slightly, feeling a little surprised. He never imagined that Garp would actually intervene. In this way, if you want to save Ace, it will be much more troublesome. With Garp blocking the front, if it wasn't for him to take action personally, it is basically impossible for other people to have the strength to compete with each other. It's Lieutenant General Garp. Lieutenant General Garp shot. This time, who can save Ace? With Lieutenant General Garp guarding there, I believe that no one can survive. Come on, kill all the pirates, they have been defeated. Quote. The morale of the Navy was high, and the confidence in their hearts instantly filled their hearts after seeing Garp appear. Even on the high platform, Sengoku looked at Garp's position with a bit of surprise in his heart. He originally thought that it was the best situation for Garp to do nothing. But I didn't expect that in the end, Garp couldn't help but do it. Ace. Suddenly, a shrill voice came out. Straw Hat Boy Luffy is about to arrive at the execution platform. At this time, Whitebeard also saw this scene. His eyes flickered, and he shouted loudly, "Everyone obey the order, help the Straw Hat Boy open the way, and block all the enemies for him." Besides him, who else is best suited to save Ace? Undoubtedly. This person is Luffy, who is related by blood to Garp. Only Luffy can save Ace. Only Luffy. Garp won't do it again. Whitebeard thought so in his heart, and immediately issued an order. At the same time, a navy attacked him. Click. He slammed his fists all around, cracking the atmosphere. Boom. Countless navies were instantly blown away, and the ability to concussion made their internal organs tumble, spitting blood, and fell to the ground in a very embarrassed manner. Make the way for Ace's younger brother. Under Whitebeard's order, a group of pirates drank loudly. Marco's eyes flashed. He understood his father's intentions, took a deep breath, took the initiative to charge forward, and opened the way for Luffy alone. Now, only Luffy is the one most likely to save Ace. Brothers, go ahead. The pirates were surging and in high spirits, desperately rushing to the battlefield ahead. Let me go away. Straw Hat Luffy also played in full swing in the battlefield, flying all the navies blocking the way. Beside him 4.2, Ivankov and Lightning, followed, blocking the surrounding people for Luffy. There are also a large number of pirates, all rushing over, effectively blocking the existence of the Lieutenant General of the Navy. Unhindered all the way. Luffy raised his head and could already see Ace in front of him. The distance between the two is less than 20 meters at all. Close. Ace, here I come. Luffy shouted with excitement on his face. The Straw Hat. Kizaru's figure flickered and appeared beside Luffy, ready to block. Kazuna, your opponent is me. Marco also appeared, kicked Kizaru with one kick, looked back at Luffy, nodded and said, "It's only you, come on." Yeah. Luffy's face was firm, looking at Ace on the execution platform. His expression couldn't hide his excitement. Chapter 424-Unchained Shackles. Go, Straw Hat Luffy. A group of pirates looked at Luffy's back and shouted loudly. Ace, I will definitely rescue you. Luffy looked ahead and made up his mind. Lightning. Ivankov's face changed and he said in a low voice. Lightning exhausted the warhead, took out the scissors-like weapon with both hands, cut it sharply against the ground, and a regular staircase appeared, following the trajectory to the execution platform. Go save people, Luffy. Lightning's eyes flickered, the corners of his mouth moved slightly, and he said. Luffy stepped out and stood on the ground smoothly, leading to the position above the execution platform. Boom. A figure stood in front of Luffy and blocked him. Luffy, if you save Ace, you have to pass me first. Garp gritted his teeth and shouted in pain. Grandpa. Luffy's eyes were very firm, and he didn't change at all. His unwavering gaze, staring at Garp in front of him, didn't stop at all. Behind him, the eyes of countless pirates were fixed on him. Go and save Ace. Straw Hat Luffy, I believe you can do it, you must succeed. Brothers, we 19 make the way for him and block these navies. Quote. The pirates roared and shouted loudly, their emotions hard to hide. Kill. The navy was naturally unwilling to be left behind, and fought with the pirates ahead. The battlefield broke out again. The pacifists also kept blasting out lasers, defeating the pirates. But they, as always, have no intention of retreating, and are firm in their beliefs. Grandpa, get out of the way. Luffy's face was firm and he shouted loudly. Impossible. Garp stared at Luffy, didn't give in, didn't make a move, just stood in front of Luffy and shouted, if you want to save Ace, you have to defeat me. Rubber. Luffy gritted his teeth, unswervingly, stretched his hands to the position behind him, and shouted, pistol. Boom. Both hands hit Garp's chin head-on, and in an instant, Garp was knocked flying, and he fell straight from the high platform to the ground, causing bursts of smoke. He didn't resist. If he fought head-on, Luffy would not be his enemy at all. But he didn't do it anymore. Everything depends on Luffy's own choice. In the end, Liang chose to save Ace. Garp felt sad and relieved in his heart. The indescribable emotions were added to his heart and could not be erased for a long time. Lieutenant General Garp was sent flying. A navy's lips moved slightly, and he said in horror. That means, Straw Hat Luffy is already on the execution stand. My God, is he really going to save Fire Fist Ace? Impossible, this really wants to achieve the prisoner's rescue. We have used so much power, how can we allow it? Quote. The navy was also boiling. Seeing that Luffy was about to arrive in front of Fire Fist Ace, they rushed forward and wanted to rush forward to stop the action of the Straw Hat Boy. Your opponent is us. Many pirates blocked the navy and shouted in unison. The two played against each other again, and the fight was inextricable and fiery. And the other side. Luffy has successfully boarded the position of the execution platform, looking at Ace who is close at hand, with a smile. Ace, I am here. Blue, Luffy. Ace's lips parted slightly, his expression inexplicable. On Luffy's body, he also carried a key to Ace's handcuffs. Everything is ready, just waiting for the shackles to be opened. Chapter 424-Unchained Shackles. Everything is ready, just waiting for the shackles to be opened. Straw Hat Boy, hurry up. A group of pirates looked at the execution platform and shouted excitedly. Finally, Ace was saved. Boy. A smile appeared on Whitebeard's face, and he said slowly. Including Marco, as well as many captains, all smiled. Ace, to be freed. Damn it. The navy looked anxious and cursed. These pirates blocked us, and we had no way to rush out. Could it be that we can only watch Fire Fist Ace being released? This is not good. If people in the world can see that our prisoners have been released intact, what will they think of our navy? They will lose trust in our navy. Quote. The navy was anxious, but still could not break through the line of defense created by the pirates in front of them. Under the siege of the pirates, he could only secretly worry, but there was nothing he could do. Not only are they anxious, but even the pirates are anxious. Seeing that Ace is about to be liberated, they are excited and their morale is like a rainbow. Faced with this situation, the situation of the navy can be imagined. On the high platform, Luffy took out a key from his arms, walked quickly behind Ace, and said, Ace, soon, you can leave here with me. Yeah. Ace nodded, his eyes flashing with a strong fighting spirit, said. On the battlefield in front, the pirates looked in their direction one by one. Those eyes made Ace unable to speak for a while, and he was very emotional. In the battlefield. Seeing the scene on the execution platform, the three generals frowned and looked ugly. Damn the straw hat boy. Akainu's face was gloomy, and he cursed directly. His footsteps moved, and he was about to rush back. It's too late. Ching Pheasant narrowed his eyes slightly, looked back, and said solemnly. Aoki, go to hell. Several pirates quickly took advantage of the blue pheasant, armed with weapons, and suddenly attacked. Boom. 063 broadsword slashed across Aokiji's head and cut a hole. However, that was just ice, and the ice cubes fell to the ground and turned into water vapor. At the same time, Aokiji's head returned to its full state again, with no expression on his face, looking at the few little pirates in front of him. An icy aura permeated his body. He stretched his hands slightly and touched the weapons of several pirates. The icy aura spread instantly. Crunch. Several pirates instantly turned into ice sculptures, motionless. Under Yangguan, several ice sculptures looked quite dazzling, braving the icy cold air, and even the ground was frozen. Within a few meters, you can clearly feel that the temperature of the air is plummeting. Immediately, Qingzi's face was calm, and he casually touched the ice sculpture in front of him. Under his touch, the ice sculpture quickly cracked and shattered. Several pirates were killed on the spot. At this time, click. A crisp voice echoed throughout the battlefield, allowing everyone to hear it clearly. Looking at it. On the execution stand. Finally, out of trouble. Ace's eyes flashed with flames, and he gradually stood up from the plank. And, gradually revealed, his pair of hands without any handcuffs. The whole body, a fiery red and hot flame is covering the whole body, and it is burning up. Chapter 425-Burning Flame. Silence. Everyone looked in the direction of the execution platform, and the round of hot flames was very dazzling. And Ace's hands can no longer see any chains of Halu stone, completely untied, completely released. Finally, are you free from the shackles? A pirate's eyes turned red, and he exhaled heavily, saying, their hard work for so long has not been in vain. Ace finally got out of trouble. Brothers, cover Ace and escape from the naval headquarters. From now on, start the evacuation plan. Everyone scattered the navy in front of you, and then rushed out of the encircling net. Brothers, come on. Quote. Many pirates shouted loudly. Seeing that Ace broke free from the shackles safely, the plan to escape was about to start. Now they are mainly escaping from the naval headquarters, and they do not need to have any entanglement with the naval headquarters. As long as Ace is rescued, it means that they have won. Although, so many people have been lost. But fortunately, they think it's worth it. Fire Fist Ace, get out of trouble. No, they're going to start escaping, and we have to organize them. The Navy also noticed the clue of the pirates. His face changed slightly, and he shouted. Seeing that the pirates are about to start their escape plan, their mood is naturally unacceptable, and this situation occurs. Especially now that the image worms reflect everything here. As the Navy, they must not lose. If they lose, the world's perception of them will change drastically. At that time, the naval headquarters will no longer have any majesty at all. Go on. Many navies shouted, armed with weapons, and madly plunged into the crowd of pirates. Boom, boom, boom. A crisp sound came out. The battle was fierce. In a quiet area, Li Ang put his arms around Hancock and quietly looked at the battlefield ahead. Can you really escape? This is the Navy headquarters. Hancock asked softly with a hint of suspicion on his pretty face. If you can really escape from the Navy headquarters, then the sea will really boil. For the first time in history, it collided with the Navy head-on and really saved people. Then, this battle can be written into the history books. What do you think, Tilda? Li Ang felt the softness of his hands and said with a smile. He didn't tell the truth, keeping Hancock in a skeptical state of mind. Wouldn't it be more interesting and tense to watch the changes on the battlefield with such a mentality? If I had known the ending long ago, I would not have felt the slightest sense of tension or anticipation in my heart, just like watching the same thing happen. For example, Li Ang himself. He knew the end of the matter, and when he saw such a picture, his mood would not fluctuate. I always feel like it's not going to be that simple. Hancock frowned slightly, took a deep breath, and whispered. Really? Look down, then. Maybe the unexpected will happen, I'm not sure. After all, this is a living battlefield. Li Ang laughed, the tip of his nose echoed the direction of Hancock's smooth hair, and said bluntly. Under the watchful eyes of both. Battlefield ahead. Seeing Ace's escape, Whitebeard shouted, Everyone, withdraw from the battlefield. Oh! The pirates shouted excitedly. After saving Ace, they felt the joy of victory. Boom! However, the pacifists are still attacking them, making them miserable. Chapter 425-Burning Flame. However, the pacifists are still attacking them, making them miserable. On the execution stand. Ace looked at Luffy and said, Luffy, let's go. Yeah. Luffy was very excited and nodded. The two jumped up and jumped off the execution platform, and could vaguely see Garp's figure on the side, looking at the two with complicated eyes. Quick, surround Fire Fist Ace and the Straw Hat Kid, don't let them escape. Deploy the siege net, everyone obey my orders, absolutely, they cannot escape today. If they escape, wouldn't our navy return with a big defeat? This kind of result is not something I can bear. So, everyone, work harder. Quote. Many navies saw Ace's direction and attacked fiercely. A group of navies, countless in number, directly trapped Ace and Luffy. Luffy, we haven't fought together for a long time, have we? Ace said with a smile. Ace, today, we will fight together. Luffy nodded, and directly displayed the second gear, with a firm expression, said. The two looked at the surrounding navy at the same time, and suddenly they launched an attack. Rubber machine gun. Flame ring pillar of fire. Both attacked at the same time. Luffy's two-handed attack was very fast, knocking all the surrounding navies into the air. Ace's whole body turned into flames, burning roaringly, and the whole person rose into the air, and a terrifying column of fire spread violently around. Boom! A loud bang. The ground trembled, and all the surrounding navies were shrouded in it. Quote. This is, Fire Fist Ace. He's back to his prime, damn him, we're not rivals at all. Ah, my hands are burned. Quote. Countless navy looked at the flames on Ace, recalling the reputation of the other party, and felt a little timid in their hearts. The raging fire came violently. Cover all navies. Ah! The navy wailed loudly, excruciatingly painful. All the navies were directly knocked 10 meters away by Ace's move and fell to the ground, with flames still burning all over their bodies, causing them to look miserable. Let's go. Ace gradually landed on the ground, his eyes twinkling, and with his back to Luffy, the two attacked again. The two of them forcibly made an unimpeded path. Luffy, go. A confident smile appeared on Ace's face, Wang Ma Jiao, and shouted loudly. Good. Luffy nodded and followed Ace. The two took steps, extremely fast, and rushed towards the area of the Whitebeard pirates in front of them. Wherever they passed, there were still countless navies trying to stop them. It's a pity that these navies were easily forced back by the joint efforts of the two groups of navies, as if there is a steady stream, are constantly approaching. There are so many. Ace looked confident and calm, not nervous at all because of the number of navies. A raging fire erupted from his whole body, rushing to the surroundings, covering all the navy and forcing him to retreat directly. Luffy on the other side also faced countless attacks from the navy, but he still coped with it with ease. His fist slammed into the navy and directly knocked the navy into the air. A road, the road to Whitebeard, is open to both of them. Chapter 426-A Kainu's Conspiracy. Ace, let's go, we don't have to fight them to the end. Everyone, hurry up, evacuate Marin Fando, don't waste time here. The longer the time, the worse it will be for us, hurry up. That's right, the love war is our biggest failure right now. Quote. All the pirates looked at Ace, who escaped, and became extremely excited and shouted loudly. The evacuation plan was their top plan. On the other hand, the Navy is not in such a good mood. Especially seeing Ace about to escape from Marin Fando is simply a great humiliation to them. How can they endure the escape of their prisoners? Chase, never let them escape. A group of Navy followed behind, gritted their teeth, and shouted with a firm expression. Armed with weapons, they frantically rushed to the positions of Fire Fist, Ace and Luffy, surrounding the site to expand, layer after layer. Trap the two of them and wait for the generals to arrive. By coincidence, the Navy has the same idea. After all, they can also see that these people cannot be the opponents of Fire Fist Ace in front of them. Only when the general arrives can they have the ability to keep them. Never let them go. A group of 303 Navy was determined and shouted loudly. Facing the heavy siege, Ace and Luffy both had calm expressions, back to back, facing the pirates in front of them, and laughed loudly. Ace said with a smile, "Luffy, this time, we will defeat more navies than any of us." Good. Luffy was excited and nodded. The two quickly plunged into the battlefield ahead. Rubber machine gun. Fire fist. The two frantically launched an attack on the Navy. Boom, boom. A terrifying sound came out. A group of Navy can't stop the two of them for much time. Seeing that each Navy was beaten into the sky, and the body that was burned by bursts of flames, the Navy felt a trace of fear in their hearts. How could they be able to face such a terrifying enemy? Even if they die, I have to stop them. A Navy colonel gritted his teeth and shouted. In any case, Fire Fist Ace cannot be let go, this is what he thought. Once Fire Fist Ace left, the blow to the Navy would be too severe, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, even if he needs to kill his own life, he can't let the Fire Fist Ace leave here. Kill. The Navy went crazy and rushed in the direction of Ace and Luffy desperately. Moreover, they formed an encircling net, which effectively surrounded the two people directly and was airtight. If you want to escape from the encircling net, you must make a channel for them. Even if the channel is played, they will make up the channel in a very short time. Therefore, if you really want to leave, you must directly defeat half of their hands. Get out of the way for me. Luffy shouted with excitement on his face. He stretched out his fists and slammed into the position in front of him. Under his attack, more than a dozen navies were thrown directly into the sky, and gradually fell to the ground. I see. One by one, the Navy was beaten into the sky by him, and he did not have any blocking ability at all. Luffy, stop fighting. Ace raised his brows, looked at the Navy that kept attacking, and reminded. I see. Luffy nodded and frantically launched his offensive. There was a raging fire burning on Ace's body. The two looked at each other, nodded, and attacked in the same direction. Chapter 426-A Kainu's Conspiracy. There was a raging fire burning on Ace's body. The two looked at each other, nodded, and attacked in the same direction. Flame ring pillar of fire. Ace burst into flames, the whole person rose into the air, and hurriedly smashed a large group of flame pillars to the ground, and the range continued to expand. Ah! A group of Navy was shrouded in flames and bounced straight away. It can be seen that the Navy is like a moth to a fire, constantly rushing into the battlefield, but it is directly killed in a second, hitting the ground and rubbing a dozen meters away. Some Navy bodies still have flames burning. The scene was very tragic. Luffy and Ace alone have beaten this group of navies to retreat. Let me come. Suddenly, a lieutenant general of the giant clan came quickly and shouted loudly. Rubber rubber. Luffy used the power of the devil fruit and slammed into the armor of the giants ahead. Boom. The lieutenant general of the giant clan didn't move, and there was no sign of anyone moving. Instead, he sneered, with this little power, do you want to shake me? This is too much. Luffy, let me come. Ace raised his brows, and a majestic fire burst out from his body, rushing towards the position of the lieutenant general of the giant clan. Boom. The flames burned, burning the entire giant clan lieutenant. Ah! The lieutenant general of the giant clan was in pain and finally shouted. Under the burning flames, his defense was not so strong that the flames could not penetrate. All over the body, that hot flame was constantly hitting his body, making his expression very ugly, clenching his teeth, his lips were bitten, and blood was flowing. Fire Fist. Ace's last Fire Fist knocked out the lieutenant general of the giant clan by dozens of meters. Immediately, he pulled Luffy and shouted, Luffy, let's go quickly, it is not appropriate to stay here. Once the general arrives, we will be in trouble. Good. Luffy nodded and stood side by side with Ace. With the cooperation of the two, they quickly broke through the Navy's encirclement again. They keep moving in the same direction. Ace. Ahead, a group of pirates saw Ace's figure and were shouting excitedly, their expressions full of excitement. Seeing Ace escape, they were sincerely happy. Everyone, wait for me. Ace's eyes flickered, and he whispered to himself. Boom. Suddenly, from behind, a terrifying voice appeared. An even hotter eye slammed into the position behind Ace and Luffy. I see. Akainu had already caught up, and watched as the distance continued to draw in. Luffy, don't worry about other things, run away. Ace's face changed slightly and shouted. Yeah. Luffy knew the seriousness of the matter and did not look back. The two kept fleeing forward without paying attention to anything behind them. See. Akainu also felt a little irritable, his brows furrowed, looking at the backs of Ace and Luffy in front of him. Even with the most terrifying speed, it would be difficult to catch up. If it goes on like this, the Fire Fist Ace and the Straw Hat Boy will definitely escape from Marin Fando. This result is definitely not what he wants to see. Suddenly, a plan emerged in his head. Akainu showed a meaningful smile on his face, facing Ace's back in front of him, and said, it's really sad, the bereaved dog. Also, the Whitebeard you respect. This guy is nothing but a product of the old times, but a mere piece of trash. He will never become the Pirate King. Chapter 427-Fire and Lava. Ace's pace was showing signs of stopping. Ace. Luffy was puzzled and asked hurriedly. The current situation is not an opportunity to fight against the opponent. Although he won't think too deeply about the problem, he can also judge that the longer the stalemate is here, the worse it will be for them. Luffy, you go first, I'll follow later. Ace was expressionless, looked at Akainu in front of him coldly, and said. No, stay with us. Let's fight this damn guy together. Luffy shook his head, his face firm, said. Yes, that's it. Akainu's eyes flickered, and he continued, as a product of the old times, Whitebeard is a complete loser. He can't become the Pirate King, he can only wander around on the sea. It's just too ridiculous to take a boatload of so-called family members. It's just what Whitebeard did to cover up his failure. He is a loser, a complete loser. Akainu looked at Ace, who was motionless in front of him, and the smile on his face was even bigger. What do you know? Ace's face was full of anger, and he shouted, Dad, how can you know his dream? Also, a loser. What is a loser? Is failure to become One Piece a loser? People like you will never understand Dad's goals. What qualifications do you have to call Dad a loser? I want you to apologize to Dad. Apologize. Akainu sneered, shook his head and said, if Whitebeard is not a loser, then why didn't he become One Piece? The reason why he has so many so-called family members is nothing more than disguising his identity as a loser. Damn it, today, I'm going to make you understand how serious your words are. Ace shouted with anger on his face. In other directions, countless pirates looked at Ace, who had stopped and started shouting. Ace, let's go, don't be fooled. Run away, you are not his opponent, get out of there quickly. Don't be fooled by Ace, he wants to use these words to cause anger in your heart, you don't have to pay attention to him. Get out of there, quickly. Quote. A group of pirates became anxious and roared. Seeing the Akainu keep approaching Ace, their hearts clenched, and their expressions became very ugly. Ace. Whitebeard frowned and shouted, come back quickly, don't pay attention to any of his words. Because that's just an excuse for him to keep you. Dad. Ace took a deep breath, closed his eyes slightly, and said to himself, I'm sorry, Dad, I will never allow anyone to insult you in any way. Never allow it. Immediately, he opened his eyes and faced the Akainu, who was about to approach without the slightest timidity and fear. Beside, Luffy is also ready, his face is firm, and he is on the same front as Ace. Whitebeard is a loser. This is something that everyone in the ocean knows. It's people like you who think he is such a great man. In the eyes of everyone, Whitebeard is an out-and-out loser. He was eliminated by the sea, and a loser, who has the right to talk about One Piece. Isn't it? Although he has a great reputation, it's just that others fear his strength. But in fact, what feat did he really do? No, he didn't. Akainu was still talking, the smile on his face did not diminish, and his expression became meaningful. Shut up. Ace's face was full of anger, the flames on his body burned, and he said directly, I will make you regret saying this. You don't understand the greatness of Dad. Since you don't understand, don't talk nonsense. At this time, Akainu was already standing in front of Ace and Luffy. He looked at Ace and Luffy in front of him, and said with a faint smile, finally let me catch up with the two of you. Next, you all die. After he finished speaking, the magma in his hands rushed out violently. Ming Dog. Chapter 427-Fire and Lava. Ming Dog. Terrifying magma dripped onto the ground, raising the temperature of the entire ground. Flame Ring. Ace was unmoved, and a terrifying flame erupted violently, colliding with the Akainu in front of him. Boom. The collision of the two is mighty, flame and magma, which is stronger or weaker? From the very beginning, these two substances are not comparable. How can flames compete with magma? Besides, the two are not rivals at the same level. Unless Ace can develop the flame to the level of a scorching sun, otherwise, the magma can directly knock his flame into disintegration in minutes. At this moment, you can see that Akainu's magma completely suppressed Ace's flame. Ace, run away. There are still countless pirates shouting loudly. Seeing Ace and Akainu entangled with each other made them nervous. I don't allow anyone to insult Daddy, I won't run away. Ace gritted his teeth and looked at Akainu in front of him, and the flames all over his body emerged again. Quote. Very good fire, but unfortunately, my magma is one level higher than your flame. Akainu sneered, lava appeared from his body, and frantically rushed to the position of Ace in front of him. Boom. A terrifying collision, and in an instant, Ace was affected by the magma. For the first time, he felt the sensation of being scalded by a substance with a higher temperature than himself. Hiss. Ace took a deep breath, and quickly took a few steps back, his hands were a little red. Look, you're a piece of shit, just like the loser Whitebeard. Akaji said with an expressionless face. I won't allow you to insult Daddy. Ace roared, his eyes were red, and he shouted, Emperor Yan. The raging fire burned and rushed towards the Akainu's position in front of him. The temperature of the flame continued to rise, and it brought a huge flame that rushed towards Akainu. Big Spitfire. Kai Gu Jiao moved the corners of the dog's mouth slightly, and brought clumps of magma with both hands, hitting the front. Magma and flames collide again. Puff. Ace was directly knocked into the air, His body was hot, he vomited blood, his face flushed, and he looked at the unharmed Akainu in front of him. Suddenly, he understood how far the gap between himself and the Akainu in front of him was. Damn it! Luffy was full of anger and shouted, "Rubber rubber, machine gun!" He rushed towards Akainu quickly. "Luffy, stop!" Ace shrank his pupils and shouted. His words had just fallen, and it was too late. Akainu's face was calm, and he grabbed Luffy's fist directly with both hands. Without expending any effort, he grabbed Luffy's neck with one hand and lifted Luffy up in the air. Luffy! Ace's face changed dramatically, his expression was full of anxiety, a hoarse voice came out, and the bloodshot eyes were filled with blood. Chapter 428-Fallen Flame. Ah! Luffy struggled, his face flushed, and hot magma emerged, making his expression particularly painful, staring at the Akainu in front of him. No comparison, no harm. In front of Liang, Akainu was like a dead dog and was beaten inhumanly. But in front of Luffy now, it is easy to kill each other casually. The level of strength is too different, and the two are not characters on the same level at all. Flame Ring. Ace's face changed dramatically, he gritted his teeth and shouted. A terrifying flame erupted from him, raging and surging. Boom! The fire was raging, and it rushed to the position of Akainu in front. The flames were burning, and Akainu was unmoved, unaware of the temperature on his body. Instead, he even felt a little warm. The magma flowed on the ground, raising the temperature of the surrounding air in a straight line. Damn it! Ace looked anxious, but couldn't shake the Akainu in front of him. So, you shouldn't have stopped since the beginning. What a stupid guy who gave up his life for the so-called dignity. Akainu sneered, looked at Ace in front of him, and smiled lightly. Let him go. Ace was full of anger and rushed forward. 250. Good. Akainu's eyes flickered, and he directly threw Luffy away, using magma, and a large group of eyes fell to the ground in his hands, attacking Luffy's position. Big Spitfire. The corners of his mouth moved slightly, and the magma sprinted away with both hands. No. Ace shrank his pupils and roared, Emperor Yan. A terrifying flame erupted frantically on his body, sprinting directly under the magma attack brought by Akainu in front of him. Boom! A loud bang. The ground was cracked with traces, and the temperature rose straight. The magma fell to the ground, and the earth became hot. Nice power. Akainu took a few steps back and smiled faintly. He patted the shirt on his body, unmoved, and did not cause any injuries due to Ace's full blow. Fire versus his magma. This possibility basically does not exist. Unless, Ace's flame can burn to the temperature of the sun. Otherwise, it is impossible to hurt Akainu. Also, the sun is not made of flames. Therefore, it can be completely calm. Ace wants to defeat Akainu, it is simply too difficult. Unless you don't use BJCG, Devil Fruit, use Armor Color or Taiju directly. But this is still too far for Ace. It is not a matter of a day or two for him to rely too much on Devil Fruits. If you want to change, it will take several years to change. At the current time, he cannot change any way of fighting at all. However, the lava restrained his flames. This matchup was doomed from the very beginning. Ace. In the distance, countless pirates shouted loudly. Seeing Ace and Akainu fighting, their hearts twitched. This guy is intermediate. Marco gritted his teeth and said with a heavy face. Akainu, this guy. Whitebeard's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a sharp glint in his eyes. At the same time, the battle between Ace and Akainu has completely heated up. Chapter 428-Falling Flame. The battle between Ace and Akainu has completely heated up. Obviously, Ace was pressed and beaten by Akainu, and he was beaten until the debate was over. The other side. Garp sat on the ground and looked at the battlefield in front of him, with blue veins on his forehead and a hoarse voice. Zhengguo, you better look at me like this, otherwise, I won't be able to resist and kill this mad dog. Cap, don't mess around. Warring States raised his brows and said solemnly. He would never doubt whether Garp had such strength. Akainu wanted to shake Garp's power, but it was still lacking. If it is one-on-one, Akainu will definitely lose to Garp, this is absolute. Garp stared gloomily ahead. Ace, who was hanged and beaten by Akainu, had a depressed face and a heavy heart. He wanted to rush up and kill Akainu. But as a Navy, he can't do this. In the battlefield, Akainu looked at Ace and Luffy in front of him, shook his head and said, just like this, what else do you want to do? Do you want to prove to Whitebeard? Prove that he is not a loser. Damn. Ace took a deep breath, his face gloomy and uncertain. He whispered, Luffy, go. Ace, let's join forces. Luffy said with a firm face and an embarrassed figure. Join us. Akainu sneered and said, you have no chance to join forces. Now, you will give me all to die. Whether it is Roger's son or Dorig's son. You two are doomed today. Die here. Then try it. Ace shouted with a firm face. Immediately, he and Luffy quickly joined forces and launched an attack on Akainu. Boom, boom, boom. The two sides continued to confront each other. The battlefield is changing in an instant, dazzling. The breath of magma directly hit Ace and Luffy all over. Boom. Akainu punched Luffy several meters into the air, his eyes twinkling. He looked down at Luffy who fell to the ground, and sneered, Straw Hat Boy, your end is here. Ming Dog. His fists turned into lava and slammed into Luffy's position. Luffy froze all over, watching a pair of magma fists attacking rapidly, unable to move. The terrifying temperature, felt at close range, made him feel unbearable burning. In his eyes, there is only this mass of magma left, infinitely magnified. And he himself had no way to escape. I can only watch helplessly. I am in a desperate situation. Die. Akainu grinned and slammed down the magma-covered fists. Luffy, be careful. Ace's face changed dramatically, and his body swooped down. Boom. A loud noise and a terrifying burning sensation enveloped Luffy. He stared blankly at Ace in front of him. Tick-tock. Bright red blood fell on Luffy's cheeks. His eyes widened, dumbfounded, staring at Ace in front of him, motionless. Ace. Luffy's mouth moved slightly, his voice inexplicable. In his chest, he was also affected by this terrifying magma, and the scalding hot feeling was directly ignored by him. Only the scene in front of him remains. Puff. Ace opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of withered blood. His face became wilted, but he still maintained his usual smile. This smile was somewhat intriguing. At his chest, a fist has directly penetrated the past. The hot breath of the magma burned all his internal organs. The fruit attributes are mutually exclusive, making him completely unable to avoid this move. The whole place fell silent. Everyone stared blankly at this picture, their expressions stiffened. Chapter 429 _ The Meaning of Existence. Luffy, you have to live well. Instead of me, fulfill my dream. Remember, you must fulfill my dream. I can only pin it on you. With blood on the corner of Ace's mouth, he coughed, and his eyes gradually darkened, said. Ace, Ace. Luffy's eyes widened, and he shouted frantically. A magma fist penetrated from Ace's chest, penetrated in front of him, and there was a burning breath that filled his chest, making the skin on his chest very hot. Dad. Ace looked dimly at the area not far away, saw the figure of the white beard, and showed a smile. You are a very competent father. Ace. Countless people shouted. A large group of pirates went crazy. They stared blankly at the picture in front of them. Even Marco froze and looked sluggish. Ace. The corners of Whitebeard's mouth moved slightly, his eyes gliding through the thick sorrow. The heart, which had been seriously injured, coughed again because of his violent mood swings, and there was a trace of blood on the corner of his mouth. No, it won't. Luffy kept shaking his head, grabbed Ace's shoulder, and shouted loudly. There's another fish that slipped through the net. Akainu looked expressionless, looked at Luffy who was still alive and well, and said lightly. Luffy, run away, take my dream with me and fulfill my dream. Ace's face changed dramatically, he roared, and shouted. No. Luffy kept shaking his head, completely collapsed. Mr. Luffy, escape. At this time, Jinpei suddenly came, and attacked the position of Akainu with the empty hands of the murlocs. Death blink. Ivankov broke out a terrifying attack, directly forcing Akainu to retreat. At the same time, Jinbei quickly grabbed Luffy's shoulders, lifted him up, and got out of the battlefield. In Luffy's chest, the hot lava still burned him. But he didn't care, and looked at the sea ahead with all his heart. As long as you enter the sea, you can be safe. Run away. Ivankov shouted loudly and shouted. Don't think about it. Akainu's eyes flashed, looking at Jinbei's back, and chasing after him. As the son of the Revolutionary Army Dragon, sinful blood is also flowing in your body. Today, you must not be let go. In situ location. Ace's eyes gradually dimmed, and a smile appeared on his face when he saw the scene of Luffy being taken away by Jinping. At this moment, he suddenly realized, what are people living for? This question is quite esoteric, everyone has a different answer for everyone, and there is no one really accurate answer. But at this moment, he had an answer of his own in his heart. Cough cough. Ace coughed, and blood spurted out of his mouth. A halo reverberated in his eyes, magnifying infinitely. All vision became blurred. Maybe this is the taste of death. To live is to have a sustenance and a belief. Luffy, you must live well. With my belief, you must go after the ultimate sea area and become One Piece. My way ends here. However, your road is far from the end. You can definitely do it, as my younger brother, you can definitely become the Pirate King. Unfortunately, this dream, I have been unable to achieve. But, you can definitely achieve, the throne of One Piece, you must get it. Chapter 429 _ The meaning of existence. Unfortunately, this dream, I have been unable to achieve. But, you can definitely achieve, the throne of One Piece, you must get it. In Ace's heart, countless thoughts flashed. In the end, no matter how many thoughts, they can only be turned into nothing and disappeared without a trace. In the end, he realized the meaning of his life. Put this belief in Luffy's success. Maybe, I'm not dead. It's just that there is a need for someone to walk in my place. I suddenly realized that maybe, my father Roger, he once thought so too. Unlike me, he put his faith on everyone who went to sea. And I put it on Luffy. It turns out that putting your faith in someone else is what it feels like. Suddenly, I don't hate him anymore. Just. Ace's eyes closed slightly, where he looked last. Whitebeard was walking towards him with a face full of anger. Ace's complicated mood turned into endless sighs. Father, it is the greatest honor in my life to be your son. Even if I die, I will not regret joining the Whitebeard pirates. Ace. Whitebeard raised his head and shouted angrily. Ace. A group of pirates watched Ace's eyes gradually close and lay on the ground. The lifeless picture, the angry mood emerged in their foreheads, and they couldn't help shouting. Did it fail? Everything has failed. Ace was actually killed in the end. This ending was something they couldn't imagine. Diamond Yoja, whose arm was frozen by the green pheasant, had completely lost consciousness. He simply shattered his arm and officially announced that he had lost an arm. Now he is no longer in the mood to care about his injuries, and he is silent as he stares at the scene of Ace's fall. Marco didn't speak either, and looked forward quietly. Foilbeasta and other captains were silent, watching Ace's death. It was a heavy blow to them. 0. Ace, was Akainu killed? The lips of many pirates trembled, and their expressions were full of disbelief. All the efforts were in vain. Fall short. In the end, Ace died. Just in their sight, Akainu was directly pierced through the chest, and it is impossible to have a chance to survive. Boom. Akainu was still in the pursuit of Luffy, but under the leadership of Jinpei, he jumped up directly, jumped into the sea in front of him, and escaped directly into the bottom of the sea. At this time, Luffy's eyes had already turned white, and he had completely fainted. Meteor volcano. Akainu raised his brows and looked at the sea in front of him, directly triggering the most terrifying move. Suddenly, a cloud of magma slammed down in the sky. Whoa! The sea splashed with layers of seawater, and clumps of white steam emerged. Even the sea was boiled directly by the magma. Don't let him escape, his importance is no less than Fire Fist Ace. Akainu's face was gloomy, and he thought to himself. Boom! Clouds of magma crashed into the sea. Nautical miles. Jinbei is carrying a straw hat and Luffy, constantly swimming, the magma in the sky penetrates the sea, and can vaguely hit a deeper position. A stream of lava passed through Jinbei's side, burning him and leaving a trace. He gritted his teeth, resisted the pain in his body, and took Luffy all the way to swim deeper. Chapter 430-Crazy Whitebeard. Ahead, a submarine appeared. Jinping's face changed slightly, and it was amazing that a submarine appeared in the sea area of Marin Fando. He looked at the piece of lava that was smashed quickly from the sky, gritted his teeth, and swam with Luffy, constantly swimming to the deepest part of the seabed. In the sea, as a murloc, he possesses a unique talent. And Akainu, who happened to be a capable person, couldn't arrest him in the sea at all. Jinbei believed that he would not be afraid of anyone if he fought in the sea. Of course, except for those terrifying sea kings, it is impossible for ordinary humans to fight him in the sea. Unless, the strength of this human being has become so powerful. For example, a monster like Liang. It's just that a human like Liang is no more than one person in the entire world. Mr. Luffy, 143, hold on. Jinbei looked at Luffy with his white eyes beside him, gritted his teeth, and thought to himself. Ahead, the submarine kept moving, and a hatch appeared. Well. Eyes flashed, looking at the person who appeared in front of him, and said, "Are you, one of the 11 supernovae, Trafalgaro? Master Straw Hat is seriously injured, please take him into our submarine. Otherwise, with his injuries, if he is not treated, he will die soon." Trafalgaro said slowly, wearing a diving suit. Good. Jinbei made up his mind and went straight into the hatch. ... Maritime. Akainu frowned, looking at the traces of no trace below, his face was expressionless, and his mood became a little irritable. This guy, Jinbei, took the Straw Hat Boy away. However, the Straw Hat Boy was attacked by his own magma. Thinking about it, it should be more fortunate. Forget it. Akainu withdrew his gaze, turned his head, and looked in the direction of the other pirates. His face remained unchanged, magma emerged from his fists, and a terrifying attack erupted violently. In his heart, he already thought that Straw Hat Luffy was more fortunate. Moreover, coupled with the location where the enemy escaped, it was under the sea. As a capable person, he couldn't help any enemy at the bottom of the sea. Even the power of magma cannot completely penetrate the sea. Therefore, even if he is helpless, he can only give up. Boom! The magma hit the ground, cracking the ground. The hot breath permeates and spreads continuously. Under one of his attacks, he took away the lives of countless pirates. Ah! Countless pirates wailed, their expressions painful, especially when a certain part of the body was infected by magma. The burning sensation was simply unbearable. Heart-piercing pain shrouded their bodies, and the nails of both hands pierced into the flesh, revealing traces of blood, showing their pain. Catch all the pirates here. Akainu was expressionless and shouted at a group of navy. Yes, Admiral Akainu. Numerous navies nodded solemnly and quickly launched a siege net against the pirates. Now, it is they who have to prevent the pirates from escaping. Damn, the Navy is going to surround us, and if we don't break through, we're going to be stuck here. What, are we going to sit still? No, never admit defeat. Quote. Many pirates were full of anger, especially after seeing Ace's corpse. It stirred a fire in their hearts. All retreat. Whitebeard was expressionless, walked out step by step, and said slowly. Chapter 430-Crazy Whitebeard. Whitebeard was expressionless, walked out step by step, and said slowly. Dad. The pirates looked at the burly figure of Whitebeard, their lips moved slightly, and said. Seeing Whitebeard's back, they always felt as if their father had aged a lot. In particular, seeing the scene of Ace dying in front of him must have impacted Dad's heart. Daddy. Marco quickly walked to Whitebeard's side and said worriedly. In his eyes, it was hard to hide that raging anger. Marco, take the rest, and withdraw from the battlefield. Whitebeard took a deep breath and commanded solemnly. Marco, who originally wanted to refuse, saw the look in Whitebeard's eyes. He was silent for a while, nodded with difficulty, and said, Don't worry, Dad, I will definitely do it. I'm very relieved when you do things. Whitebeard nodded and walked forward alone. On the high platform. Warring States watched Whitebeard come alone, his pupils shrank, and he shouted, Everyone be careful, the most destructive man in the world, he is going crazy. Aokiji and Kizaru also looked at Whitebeard's position. Akainu's face was gloomy, staring at Whitebeard without blinking. The three generals were all looking at Whitebeard, waiting for a joint siege. Ace. Whitebeard looked at Ace's corpse from a distance. His face was complicated, he sighed inexplicably, and helplessly raised his head to look at the blue sky. Under his order, Marco quickly dispatched many pirates on the battlefield and returned to the position behind Whitebeard. They must be ready to evacuate the battlefield. But, the price is horrendous. Because there is still a group of navies blocking it. At this time, Whitebeard made his move. He held the naginata and slammed it forward. Boom. A terrifying shock force swept through the crowd of the navy ahead. Ah! Countless navy wailed, their expressions painful, and they were directly beaten to a height of more than 10 meters before gradually falling to the ground, and the whole person's internal organs were shattered. Next, your opponent is me. Whitebeard's eyes did not show any expression fluctuations, and said coldly. Finally dispatched. Whitebeard. The three generals were expressionless, looking at the figure of the Whitebeard, their hearts were under great pressure. Although, Whitebeard is old, and he no longer has the strength of the year. Even because of their plan, Whitebeard's heart was hit hard. But the opponent's terrifying strength still made their scalps numb. 5.8 inches. It's just Whitebeard, he's already injured, we don't have to be afraid of him at all. Come on, kill Whitebeard and take his head. This is our glory, as long as we kill Whitebeard, we can honor our ancestors. Quote. The navy also shouted, his face full of excitement, and rushed to the position of the Whitebeard in front of him. At the same time, facing the swarming group of navy, Whitebeard swung a huge naginata with both hands and went down in a battle. Boom. The power of the shock spreads. A group of navy was beaten up and flew around. In midair, they vomited blood and died on the spot. Under the power of Whitebeard's shaking fruit, this is no joke. He's just a man, so what's the fear? A navy gritted his teeth, boosted morale, and shouted. Chapter 431-Movements of the Old Times. Under the leadership of Marco, many pirates have concentrated on the position behind Whitebeard. They looked at the Whitebeard who was fighting alone in front of them. Their eyes were a little wet, the circles of their eyes were red, and they couldn't help shouting loudly. Dad, let us help you. Brothers, kill, don't let Dad fight alone. Even if I die in battle, so what? It's the greatest honor in my life to be my father's son. Quote. Stop. Marco raised his brows and shouted. Captain Marco. Everyone was puzzled and looked at Marco. I see. Marco lowered his head, his face was gloomy, and he shook his head and said, You guys, do you want to distract Dad? Now, even if you rush to the battlefield ahead, you're just sending unnecessary casualties. This. Everyone was speechless, unable to speak, and sighed. If you want to help Dad, then listen to Dad. We try not to interfere with Dad. This is already a great help to Dad. Marco's eyes flashed and he said slowly. Even though he really wanted to plunge into the battlefield ahead, he understood that even if he participated in the battlefield, it would only be a disturbance to the 19th Baihu. Now Whitebeard is fighting without fear. Front. Whitebeard waved the naginata with both hands, and the terrifying force attacked forward, bringing with it waves of terrifying shock force that swept the audience. A large group of navy surrounded them, but they were quickly blown away by Whitebeard. It can be said, how many come, how many die. There is no one who can stop Whitebeard's pace. His tyranny made countless pirates shudder. Whitebeard, as strong as ever. Sengoku raised his brows, his face became a little heavy, and his voice was hoarse, he said. Seeing a group of pirates in front of him, he couldn't shake Whitebeard in the slightest. Moreover, although Whitebeard's condition plummeted, he still showed such terrifying strength. This really made him feel very bad. If this continues, how many people can stop Whitebeard's footsteps? Akainu, do it. Sengoku frowned, looked at Akainu's position, and said in a low voice. Yeah. Akainu nodded and took the initiative to stand up with Aokiji and Kizaru. Everyone has the power of the devil fruit. The red dog turned into a mass of magma, the green pheasant turned into ice, and the golden monkey shone with golden light. 3 generals, dispatched at the same time. The general has shot. This time, Whitebeard will definitely be defeated. That's right, everyone has withdrawn from the battlefield, and don't bring any disturbance to the general. We are no longer able to participate in the next battle. What we can participate in is to directly arrest those pirates behind Whitebeard. Quote. The navy again turned their attention to the pirates and shouted loudly. They were excited, armed with weapons, and were about to move forward. Go away. Whitebeard's face remained unchanged, and he was cut down with a knife. Boom. All the navy who tried to get close to the pirates behind them were all beheaded. This fierce attack directly brought an effective deterrent force to the navy. Ming Dog. Akainu launched the attack first, his fists turned into lava, and attacked in the direction of Whitebeard. It's you. Whitebeard's eyes moved, staring at the Akainu in front of him, and a deep anger flashed in his eyes. A white halo appeared in his fists, and he slammed into the front. Click. The atmosphere cracked, and the white atmosphere, like glass, cracked open, like a spider web, with traces appearing. Empty shock. The corners of Bybird's mouth moved slightly, and he shouted loudly. Chapter 431 _ Movements of the Old Era. NLT, 29 and GT. The corners of Bybird's mouth moved slightly, and he shouted loudly. Boom. The shocking power collided with Akainu's magma. In the end, he won with the power of shock, crushed Akainu's ghost dog, and rushed directly to Akainu's body, bringing a shock that penetrated into the internal organs of the body. Cough cough. Akainu coughed, his figure retreated sharply, a trace of blood appeared on the corner of his mouth, and his face became particularly dignified. Whitebeard really lives up to its reputation. Laser. The figure of Kizaru suddenly appeared beside Whitebeard, a golden halo appeared on his fingers, slammed through the air, and arrived at Whitebeard's side. Click. Whitebeard smashed out with a punch, cracking the atmosphere, and the force of the vibration rushed to the position of Kizaru. Moreover, the lasers of Kyabu were directly defeated. In the confrontation of power, Whitebeard occupies the absolute initiative. As expected of a Whitebeard. Kizaru's eyes flickered and disappeared quickly, avoiding the shocking force of Whitebeard without any risk. At this time, the green pheasant turned his hands into ice cubes, unfolded his abilities against the ground, and moved the corners of his mouth slightly, saying, Ice Age. Crunch. The ground was frozen, and it continued to spread to Whitebeard's feet, effectively freezing Whitebeard's feet. Unfortunately, in less than a moment, the ice cubes cracked, and the Whitebeard shook all the ice cubes under his feet. The joint efforts of the three generals seemed to be unable to effectively suppress Whitebeard at all. You know, this is the old age of Whitebeard, and it has also been hit hard in the heart. If it were his heyday, how terrifying would it be? It's unimaginable. It's still so strong. On the high platform, Sengoku's face became very heavy. Seeing that the three generals were also indistinguishable from the Whitebeard, his heart also lifted. Go. On the other hand, the navy is ready to attack the direction of the pirates. Yes, leave them all here. Warring State's eyes flashed and he shouted loudly. Not only Whitebeard, but all the members of the Whitebeard pirates, today 103, must stay here. From now on, the Whitebeard pirates will completely disappear from the sea. Damn. Marco's whole body was flickering with flames, ready to lead the pirates behind him to fight. Marco, back off. The corners of Bybird's mouth moved slightly, standing in front, and said in a low voice. Dad. Marco's movements stopped abruptly, and he looked forward with a dull expression. The next battle, leave it all to me. You, withdraw from the battlefield. Whitebeard's face was flat and his eyes were expressionless, he said. Just when his words just fell. A white halo appeared in his fists. Shake earthquake. Whitebeard shouted loudly, and his fists slammed into the atmosphere. Click. A crisp voice came out. Boom. The ground trembled, and there was a violent shaking. In the sight of everyone, they saw an unbelievable picture. I see. The ground cracked. Taking the back of Whitebeard as the dividing line, under the impetus of his ability to shake the fruit, he directly cracked the ground of the entire Marin Fando. Boom. Marin Vando was beaten in half. In the middle, there is a deep gap that ordinary navies cannot cross. This also completely separated Whitebeard from the pirates such as Marco behind him. Chapter 432-Crazy. Silence. The navy was startled by Whitebeard's terrifying attack, staring blankly at the huge gap ahead, bottomless. It's like an abyss. Their footsteps were fixed in the position beside them. Whoa. Some gravel fell into the dark abyss, and not even a sound echoed. It can be seen how deep this abyss is. So strong, is this the power of Whitebeard? It's too terrifying to beat Marin Fando in half with one's own power. My God, it's the first time I've seen such a scene. Whitebeard, as expected, is indeed Whitebeard, too strong. Quote. Many navies were startled and looked dumbfounded. Originally, they still wanted to move forward and attack the navy in front. Unfortunately, now it seems that this possibility does not exist. The abyss about 7 or 8 meters away completely separated them from the pirates in front. On the high platform, Warring States frowned, his face gloomy, and said, leave a way back for your sons. Whitebeard, it seems that you want to keep yourself here. He had already seen Whitebeard's intentions. It's just, I didn't expect that it has already reached this point, and Whitebeard can still exert such terrifying power. Just like the Whitebeard back then. Dad. Marco and a group of pirates behind him stared blankly at the crack in front of him and shouted loudly. They looked anxious, looking at Whitebeard alone, choosing to stay alone in the battlefield ahead. Their mood was sour for a while, and the circles of their eyes were red. Looking at Whitebeard's burly back, their expressions were full of tension. Dad, come back soon. Let's fight together again, old man. Dad, what are you doing? Let's follow in your footsteps and fight the Navy headquarters together. Quote. In the eyes of many pirates, tears shed unknowingly and shouted. Marco gritted his teeth, clenched his fists, looked at the back of the Whitebeard in front of him, took a deep breath, and shouted, be quiet, Dad has his own considerations. Let's not interrupt. Captain Marco. Everyone looked at Marco and unconsciously chose to remain silent. However, seeing the lonely figure of Whitebeard in front of them, they still felt bad. The battlefield directly ahead. Countless navies flocked in the direction of Whitebeard frantically, and his face was always the same, without any waves, and it was even less likely to bring the slightest sense of tension. Whitebeard felt the shouts behind him, and his expression became slightly moved. I am the happiest in my life, and it is precisely because of your sons. Let me come and open a way for you. You must return to the New World safely. Whitebeard looked at the attacking navy ahead. Lang Lang smiled and said, I am a remnant of the old era, and the new era has no ship that can carry me. Then let me follow the old era and be annihilated in the long river of history. Next, the only enemy you have to face is myself. So, if you have any tricks, use them as soon as possible. I will take it all by myself. After he finished speaking, he held the naginata in both hands and slashed it down violently. Shake Jade Shatter. A sharp slash slashed the ground to pieces. Boom. The audience was shrouded in his terrifying power, and countless navy wailed loudly. Big Spitfire. Akainu rushed forward and launched a fierce attack on Whitebeard. Akainu, you brat. Whitebeard's eyes narrowed slightly, but his face was still full of anger. Seeing the magma covering his body, he only turned his face slightly. Boom. Chapter 432-Crazy. NLT, 31 and GT. Boom. Half of Whitebeard's face was pierced by the lava. However, he didn't have any painful expression. His left hand directly grabbed Akainu's head, a white halo appeared, and the armed color was domineering. Shattered Air Shatter. Whitebeard shouted loudly, and the shock of his left hand swept Akainu's head violently. Whitebeard directly grabbed Akainu's forehead in the way of injury for injury. At this time, Akainu's eyes widened, unable to respond. The terrifying shock force made his head dizzy. Puff. Akainu vomited blood, and his eyes gradually became blurred. Boom. On the ground, a huge crack appeared, separated from Akainu's entire head, directly penetrating the ground, cracking the ground. Afterwards, Whitebeard grabbed Akainu's head and threw it to the side, as if he was hitting a dead dog. And Akainu is completely incapable of resisting. With a plop sound, Akainu fell to the ground, spitting blood. His expression was particularly embarrassed, his face was covered with blood, and he had been directly injured. Cough cough. Whitebeard was not feeling well either. Half of his entire face was beaten. Even the iconic Whitebeard was burned by the magma. Half of his face was left, looking forward. Shock Jade Shatter. Holding the naginata in both hands, a terrifying force erupted again, sweeping the navy crowd in front of him. Boom. The entire earth was torn apart, and all the navy suddenly flew away. Their internal organs were displaced, blood was vomited, some were seriously injured, and some were killed on the spot. Dad. Marco and the others roared desperately behind them, seeing that half of Whitebeard's face was knocked off. Their hearts were simply too painful. He can only watch helplessly. The Whitebeard in front of him is alone, facing the attack of so many people. The scars on his body are getting more and more. Go. A giant clan lieutenant armed with a giant axe attacked the position of Whitebeard in front of him. Seeing that the Whitebeard was already shaky, his eyes were filled with frenzied mood swings, and he shouted, "The head of the Whitebeard is mine." He slashed the giant axe down, and Whitebeard reached out a little and grabbed the giant axe directly. Crunch. The giant axe split inch by inch, turned into countless iron blocks, and fell to the ground. Empty shock. Whitebeard was expressionless and punched. Click. The atmosphere cracked open, and the lieutenant general of the giant family was enveloped in a shocking force. Puff. He vomited blood, rolled his eyes, and was seriously injured on the spot. He flew a dozen meters away, fell to the ground and rubbed it, and even smashed some of the navy directly to death, and then gradually stopped. The lieutenant general of the giant clan was also killed in seconds. A navy was a little terrified, looking at the demon-like Whitebeard in front of him, unable to hide his fear, and said, "Whitebeard, he is a monster. Even if half of his head is lost, can he still possess such terrifying power? He can't support it for long, let's do it. If you kill Whitebeard, he will never have the ability to resist. A group of Navy looked at the Whitebeard in front and roared loudly, excited. They rushed forward quickly, but were not completely close. Whitebeard blasted away with a punch, cracking the atmosphere and bringing a terrifying force over a group of attacking navies. Boom! One by one, the navy flew wildly into the sky and fell to the ground. In an instant, another group of navy was wiped out. NLT, 32 and GT. Chapter 433-Unkillable Monsters. Silence. All the navy stared blankly at the picture in front of them, unable to move, and their eyes could not hide a deep sense of fear. So, aren't they dead? Shoot, shoot. A navy did not dare to approach and shouted loudly. Boom, boom, boom. The bullets cut through the air and reached Whitebeard's body. Puff. Blood splattered, Whitebeard was expressionless, and countless bullet holes appeared on his body. Holding the naginata in his left hand, he looked at the navy in front of him, and there was no sign of moving. Is it dead? A navy asked weakly. When the rest of the navy saw the figure of Whitebeard, they shouted loudly. Whitebeard, he's dead, he's dead. Come on, chop off his head and take his head. Brothers, go ahead, Whitebeard is dead, there is nothing to fear. Quote. The navy dispatched one after another and launched an attack in the direction of Whitebeard. However, at this time, Whitebeard still looked straight ahead, grinning, and the smile was a little stiff. But his smile was infinitely magnified in the sight of countless navies ahead, making the hearts of a group of Navy 690s a little hairy and goosebumps arose. Shock, broken jade. Whitebeard picked up his naginata and slashed forward sharply. Boom. The ground cracked, and countless navies were beheaded again. The dead navy group after group, the ground, the corpses everywhere, the blood is flowing into the river. The navy fell silent, didn't dare to say a word, stared blankly at the Whitebeard who was still standing in front of him, and didn't dare to move at all. They thought that Whitebeard was dead countless times, but in fact, Whitebeard still stood in front of them alive and well, and gave them a sharp blow. This monster, isn't he dead yet? My God, why isn't he dead yet? Isn't he going to die? Impossible, he has already suffered so much damage, and a normal person would have already fallen. However, he is still standing, this is too terrifying. Quote. The navy was terrified, seeing the Whitebeard who was still standing, he did not dare to act rashly. Under their feet, there were too many corpses piled up. If they act rashly, it is very likely that they will become one of the piles of corpses under their feet. Empty shock. A white halo appeared in Whitebeard's fists and attacked again. Ah! Many navies were swept up by this force, their internal organs were directly smashed, blood was vomited, and they were killed on the spot. Even some of the direct corpses were beaten and exploded, turned into a cloud of blood, and fell to the ground, with no bones left. This monster. The expressions of Aokiji and Kizaru also changed slightly. Seeing that the Whitebeard still did not fall down, he felt a lot of pressure in his heart. After receiving so much damage, he can still launch such a terrifying power. 8-foot mirror. The golden monkey's whole body turned into a golden light that flickered and disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared above Whitebeard's head, and his feet turned into golden particles, gathering a golden light. Light speed kick. Click. Whitebeard didn't turn his head, the fist of his left hand smashed to the side, bringing a crisp and pleasant sound. The whole body of Huang Yuan was directly shaken by more than 10 meters, his figure was embarrassed, his brows were furrowed, and he stared at the Whitebeard in front of him, motionless. Even he felt a sense of displacement of his internal organs, and naturally he did not dare to act rashly. Chapter 433-Unkillable Monsters, and GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. NLT, 33 and GT. Even he felt a sense of displacement of his internal organs, and naturally he did not dare to act rashly. Dad. Marco and others watched Whitebeard be besieged. Their faces became very ugly, and their hearts were under great pressure. They all opened their mouths and shouted loudly. Daddy alone helped us block all the enemies. I hate that I don't have the strength to change all this. Damn Navy. Dad wants to use his life to make way for us. Let us get out of here safely. Daddy, you don't need to do that. Don't say anything, we have to respect Dad's choice. Marco reprimanded, his face ashen. He was also in a bad mood, but since this was Whitebeard's choice, he naturally had to go all the way according to the will of the BJED side. He could see that Whitebeard just wanted them to return to the New World safely. He must fulfill this requirement. Dad, I will definitely lead the pirate group and return to the New World smoothly. Marco looked at Whitebeard's back and meditated in his heart. Center of the battlefield. There are not too many navies left, and under the suppression of Whitebeard's terrifying strength, they all collapsed. Akainu stood up from the ground with difficulty. His face was covered with blood, his face was extremely ugly, and he looked at the Whitebeard who was smashed by him and had half his head left, still alive, and his mood fell to the bottom. This damn monster, isn't it dead yet? Akainu's lips trembled as he roared in his heart. He really couldn't accept it. After receiving such a tyrannical move, he still looked alive. Moreover, his attack has obviously brought devastating damage to the opponent. But even so, Whitebeard still did not fall. This man is like an undead monster. No matter how many attacks hit the opponent, he cannot take his life away. Even though, there were already a lot of bullet marks on Whitebeard's body. The blood also spilled out a little bit, and despite the scars, the Whitebeard still stood as always. It's terrifying. Many Navy lips trembled, their throats were dry, and they did not dare to attack again. Seeing the immortal state of Whitebeard, it is the existence they are afraid of. On the high platform, Sengoku looked in the direction of Whitebeard, sighed secretly, and shook his head. He could see that Whitebeard was seriously injured, but why didn't he fall down? That's just, his tenacious willpower still supports him, allowing him to protect the pirates behind him and evacuate safely. What a great spirit, Whitebeard. The corner of the warring state's mouth moved slightly, with a hint of admiration, said. Even though the two positions are opposite, he still admires the spirit and will of Whitebeard. If it was him, he couldn't do it at all. As an old rival, watching the death of the other party like this may be a great relief. Time is not forgiving. Not only is Whitebeard getting old, he is getting old too. The other side. In a quiet area. Liang and Hancock looked at the battlefield ahead. Hancock's delicate face was still a little surprised. Is it a surprise? Liang narrowed his eyes slightly, leaned on Hancock's fragrant shoulder, smelled the direction of the other party's body, and asked with a smile. Yeah. Hancock nodded lightly, without denying it. She was really surprised. Seeing Ace's death and Whitebeard's still immortal state after being severely injured, she was really shocked. Really? The battlefield is changing rapidly, and not everyone can infer the result. Originally, she thought that the Whitebeard pirates should successfully escape from the Navy headquarters as a successful one. Looking at it this way, it is obvious that the Navy headquarters won the final victory. So, nothing is absolute. Liang's eyes twinkled brightly, looking at the battlefield ahead, still deadlocked, and said earnestly. NLT, 34 and GT. Chapter 434 Blackbeard debuts. Suddenly, Liang's eyes flashed, he looked strangely at another location, and said with a smile, Look, the battle situation, there is a new change. New changes. Hancock's pretty face showed a bit of puzzlement, and he muttered. Go on, keep a sense of mystery, isn't it better? Liang smiled, put his arms around Hancock and hugged him into his arms. Hancock blushed, did not speak, quietly looked at the battlefield ahead, and said in a low voice, It seems that you already know it. Don't tell me, if I said I already knew, would you believe it? Liang said slowly with a smile. How is that possible? Hancock rolled his eyes, looking charming. She would never believe that Liang really already knew about this. Who would have thought that in Liang's head, he already knew the beginning and end of many things? In this regard, Liang smiled and did not deliberately explain. Knowing or not knowing, for him, is of little significance. In the face of absolute strength, anything can turn things around. In the sight of the two, the battlefield in front of them also changed a little. Big Spitfire. Akainu gritted his teeth and attacked Whitebeard again. Boom. A white halo appeared in Whitebeard's hands, and he slammed into the air, cracking the atmosphere, and a shocking force hit the front. The magma collided with the shaking. In an instant, all the magma was splashed and thrown around randomly. Tick-tock. The magma fell to the ground, bringing extremely high temperatures. At the same time, the aftermath of the shock smashed all the navies around. Some were unfortunately shrouded in magma and died on the spot. In addition, the internal organs of the body were shaken so that the internal organs were turned into pus and blood, and they died directly. All kinds of scenes can be presented in today's battlefield. Whitebeard still did not fall down. His face was expressionless, looking at the three people in front of Akainu, Aokiji, and Kizaru. Even if half of his face was beaten, he was still full of combat power. It was this that made the Navy feel fear in their hearts. Akainu kid. Whitebeard looked at Akainu with unconcealed anger in his eyes. Especially when he recalled the scene where Ace was killed by the opponent, his mood was indescribable. Shock Jade Shatter. He was holding a big sword and slashed it with one sword. Boom. A fierce slash, containing domineering, directly impacted the position of Akainu. Ming Dog. Akainu's eyes and hands are quick, and he quickly resisted the attack of Whitebeard in front of him. The two attacked and collided, and the fire was radiant. In the end, Whitebeard's fruit ability was better, forcing Akainu to retreat a few steps. The blood in his heart was tumbling, and the corners of his mouth were smeared with blood. Go! Aokiji's eyes flashed, and his body turned into ice cubes, exuding an icy cold breath. Two ice thorns also appeared in his hands, which he threw directly. The ice thorn cut through the air and arrived in front of Whitebeard. However, the ice thorn was slightly punched by Whitebeard, and it turned into a ball of ice powder, which instantly vanished and ceased to exist. Buzz. The golden ape turned into a golden halo and appeared beside Whitebeard, and a laser pierced Whitebeard's left arm. Die. Whitebeard's right fist slammed on Kizaru's body, armed with a domineering look, and Kizaru couldn't hide, and was directly hit in the chest from the front. Puff. Chapter 434 debuts. And LT, 35 and GT. Puff. Huang Yuan vomited blood, flew over a dozen meters, fell to the ground and rubbed several meters, stood up very embarrassed, and looked at the Whitebeard in front of him and felt a burst of heart palpitations. At this time, there were countless scars on Whitebeard's body. The bullet hole in half of his face were burned by Akainu, and his left arm was also directly pierced by Kyabu. Even so, Whitebeard still stands. This scene really makes my scalp numb. Is this monster really not going to die? Behind the three generals, the Navy did not dare to act rashly. They stared blankly at the Whitebeard in front of them, terrified and shivering. He's not dead. Whitebeard, this monster isn't dead. Even with so many attacks from the general, with so many scars on his body, he still didn't fall. My God, this is horrible. What on earth is his body made of? Why, with so many scars, still hasn't fallen? Monster, a truly undead monster. Quote. Many navies were terrified and whispered. Accompanied by their original fear, but after the spread, their fear was also infinitely magnified in everyone's heart. Seeing the immortal Whitebeard, their mood is indescribable. The heart was also pierced, and half of the head was beaten. In this way, he has not fallen yet. What a tenacious vitality. It's horrible, this monster. A navy involuntarily flinched, not daring to move forward. In front, there is only one person. Whitebeard alone blocked them all. At the feet of Whitebeard, it was empty. And all around, countless corpses of the navy piled up into mountains and blood flowed into rivers. No one can get close to Whitebeard's surroundings, not even a general. Seeing this picture, the countless pirates who were separated behind them were moved, their eyes were red, their hands clenched their fists, and they looked at the Whitebeard who was fighting alone in front of them, silent. Seeing Whitebeard's situation, their hearts are bleeding. This is their most respected father. However, he was so besieged by the navy that he even pierced half of his head. Don't act rashly. Marco gritted his teeth and reminded again. He must not fail Whitebeard's orders to him. His mission is to bring this group of people back to the New World safely. This is what he promised Whitebeard, and he will do it anyway. In the battlefield, Whitebeard's eyes were slightly heavy and bleak, his vitality was rapidly disappearing, and he could not change the outcome of this matter. Since being pierced by a knife in the heart, this result has been doomed. He never regretted coming to Maravendo to save Ace. However, he felt a group of pirates behind him, and there was a trace of worry in his heart. Now, the only thing that can make him worry is the group of pirates behind him. Be sure to return to the New World safely. Whitebeard thought so in his heart, holding the Naginata sword in his hand, looking straight ahead. Sudden. On the horizon ahead, a figure appeared in Whitebeard's line of sight, causing his complexion to change slightly. A very harsh laughter came out. Thief, ha 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 ha. Lang Lang's laughter was accompanied by a confident and arrogant voice. Dad, you are still the same. However, now you are so fragile, I really hate you. You are old. NLT, 36 and GT. Chapter 435 Poor Dagger C. Silence. Everyone stared blankly at this new group of people, their faces puzzled and puzzled. What happened? Titch. Whitebeard's pupils shrank, and his face was cold and severe. Looking at the group of Blackbeard and the others who appeared in front of him, his expression became particularly angry, and his murderous intent fluctuated. In this world, he can forgive anyone. Whether it's Ace's death, or Sengoku's strategy. But only, Titch is unforgivable. Front. Blackbeard led a group of prisoners behind him, and walked towards the battlefield in front of him step by step, with a calm expression and no tension at all. Beside him stood Bashes, Poison Q, Lafitte, Van Oka, and the many ferocious prisoners of infinite hell released in the advancing city. The navy stared blankly at Blackbeard and the others, and shouted. That is the king of evil, Abaro Pizarro. And the gigantic battleship, the San Juan Hungry Wolf. That's Katerina. Wait, could this sword-wielding man be the rumored deputy director of the advanced city, Shiryu of the Rain? Just because he likes killing too much, he was imprisoned in prison by Director Magellan himself. I didn't expect that even he appeared. ... Many navies looked at Blackbeard's lineup and felt terrified. 380 is definitely the strongest force on the battlefield today. Of course, excluding the Sengoku Marshal and Lieutenant General Garp were not sold. These people actually gathered into a force, which really made them unbelievable. On the high platform, Warring States frowned, staring at Blackbeard and the other group in front of him. At this moment, he suddenly understood Blackbeard's intention. I see. From the very beginning, Blackbeard was going to take action against the advancing city. It's just that he didn't know the other party's intentions, and he didn't send too much power to advance the city. This time, Blackbeard took advantage of it and released the prisoners on the 6th floor. Moreover, he also restrained a terrifying tyrannical force for himself. But, in this case, why did the other party come here? This doubt made Zhangguo's face full of confusion and could not be explained. Since all the partners have been called, why should they join this trip to the muddy water? It stands to reason that if the goal is achieved, it is impossible to appear in the eyes of everyone, and it is the best way to choose to develop the power silently and alone. From this, it can also be understood that the purpose of Blackbeard has not been completed. What is his purpose? Sengoku's face became heavy, and he couldn't fathom Blackbeard's mind. But what is certain is that the other party's appearance here is by no means to reminisce with Whitebeard, but has a deeper purpose. He can be 100% sure of this. With the character of Blackbeard, he will never do these meaningless things. The other side. When Marco and the others saw the Blackbeard that appeared, their faces were full of anger, and their anger rose to the sky. "Titch, you bloody traitor!" Marco gritted his teeth and stared at Blackbeard Titch. In his heart, he never regarded any enemy as someone who would kill. But from now on, there will be a sure killer in his heart. Blackbeard Titch must not stay. Akainu killed Ace, but did not let Marco think that he had to kill Akainu. However, only Titch can never forgive. If it hadn't been for Titch, there wouldn't have been so many subsequent events. And now, the other party dares to appear here, there must be a purpose. Damn traitor, kill him. Chapter 435 Figure Dagger C. And LT, 37 and GT. Damn traitor, kill him. Blackbeard Titch, this traitor, I'm going to cut him with 1,000 cuts. Tiki, how dare you appear here? Quote. Everyone in the Whitebeard pirates shouted with deep anger. Seeing the appearance of Blackbeard, their suppressed anger erupted in an instant. However, Marco still restrained their impulses. Although he was unbearable in his heart, it was the most unwise to collide with Tick under this situation. Front. Whitebeard looked at Blackbeard, who was walking step by step, and said, "For the sake of the devil fruit, BJAI, you who can kill relatives is the most intolerable of me. Anyone can forgive, but you can't forgive." After he finished speaking, a white halo appeared in his fists, and the ability to shake the fruit was activated. Seeing Whitebeard's actions, Blackbeard's eyes were filled with greed, and he laughed loudly. "Dad, you are already old. The next era is no longer your era. What about the Blade relatives? Let me, for you, finally get rid of the cancer of this era." Whitebeard took a deep breath, feeling the anger of a group of pirates behind him, and meditated in his heart. He opened his eyes in vain and fiercely attacked Blackbeard. Kill. Blackbeard was not far behind. A mass of dark matter emerged from his hands, covering the entire earth, and shouted, "Dark acupuncture." The huge ground was covered with dark matter, and the momentum spread to the feet of Whitebeard. All objects will be swallowed up by darkness. However, at this time, a white halo appeared on Whitebeard's feet, which directly blocked these dark substances under his feet, without any impact at all. Dark water. The dark matter of Blackbeard's fist surged, directly attracting Whitebeard in front to a direct position. Shattered air shatter. The fist of Whitebeard's left hand slammed into the air. Click. The atmosphere cracked. At the same time, the collision between Whitebeard and Blackbeard broke out. Boom. Concussion and darkness, two violent forces are colliding with each other. "Dad, I said, you are old." Blackbeard grinned and shouted. Whitebeard's face was expressionless, his right hand was also covered with a white halo, and he slammed down Blackbeard's back. Click. The terrifying shock caused Blackbeard's complexion to change dramatically. With a "wow," he spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes widened, and his expression was full of shock. Boom. At the same time, Blackbeard gritted his teeth and activated the ability of the dark fruit, giving Whitebeard a heavy blow to his chest. Whitebeard didn't dodge, and directly endured the attack. However, he didn't let go, grabbed Blackbeard's head directly, and shouted, "Shattered air shatter." An armed arrogance is also contained in the fruit ability. Boom. The power of the shock caused Blackbeard's head to endure a terrifying shock, and he vomited blood, looking very embarrassed. Damn. Blackbeard's face was gloomy, dark matter appeared in his hands, and he rushed towards Whitebeard's chest. Suddenly, Whitebeard loosened his fist, and Blackbeard was able to breathe, and quickly backed away to distance himself from Whitebeard. At this time, looking at the Blackbeard in front of him, the Whitebeard's eyes became heavier and heavier. He calmed down his breathing, and the tenacious willpower he retained prevented him from falling down easily. However, his vision gradually became blurred. Chapter 436-Whitebeard and Blackbeard. In the end, it can't be supported anymore. Whitebeard sighed inwardly, looking at the gradually blurred figure in front of him, feeling extremely helpless. Vitality has finally reached its limit time. For so long. But with the passage of time, he still will die here. It's just that, seeing the appearance of Blackbeard Tiki, his tenacious will emerged again, but here, he still can't support him any longer. If that's the case, let's try it out, the last wave of attacks. If this tumor is left, it will bring too much turmoil to this sea. Whitebeard's eyes twinkled, and he made up his mind. Kill. Blackbeard coughed and spit out blood, still very excited, shouting loudly. By his side, everyone followed him and took the initiative to attack Whitebeard in front. Shattered air shatter. Whitebeard's face remained unchanged, and he took the initiative to confront Blackbeard, shouting loudly. Boom. The attack of Blackbeard's dark fruit directly penetrated his chest, making his injury even heavier. However, at this moment, the injury on his body had already made him numb. Carrying all the injuries on his body, Whitebeard arrived in front of Blackbeard and grabbed Blackbeard's head directly with his fist covered in armed color. At this time, Blackbeard finally felt something wrong. His eyes widened, and he shouted in a voice, "Dad, I am your son." "Titch, I don't have a son like you." Whitebeard's expression remained unchanged, and he shouted loudly. The shocking power of the fist slammed into Blackbeard's forehead swiftly. He was once again endured by this terrifying shock force, causing Blackbeard's eyes to turn white, and he almost fainted. Cough cough. There was blood on the corner of Blackbeard's mouth, blood all over his face. In his eyes, looking at Whitebeard's eyes, in addition to panic, there is also a strong greed. Such power. Such power is what he sees as the most powerful devil fruit in the world. If it weren't for this force, he wouldn't have planned so much at all. Everything you do is waiting for this moment. How could he allow himself to be killed by Whitebeard at this critical moment, which means that he will fall short? This price is not something he can bear. "Dad, how can you kill your son?" Titch roared, watching Whitebeard's attacks come one after another, and a sense of fear appeared in his heart. He didn't want to die at this critical moment. The biggest negligence of all plans is that he neglected the strength of Whitebeard. Who would have thought that it has already reached this point, that Whitebeard still has such a terrifying Liang, which is unexpected for him, including everyone present. Captain. A crew member of the Blackbeard pirates launched an attack. Boom, boom, boom. Bullets penetrated the air and reached Whitebeard's body. Puff, puff, puff. Blood splashed and fell on the ground. Whitebeard only felt that the sight of his eyes was getting weaker and weaker, his body was numb, it didn't bring any pain, and his body became heavier. Cough cough. He coughed and spit out a mouthful of pus and blood. However, taking this opportunity, Blackbeard activated the ability of the dark fruit and violently attacked Whitebeard's chest. Boom. There was also a huge blood opening on Whitebeard's chest, and the blood was flowing slowly. On his body, there are countless, and it is impossible to count them. Blackbeard immediately fled back, his eyes were hard to hide, looking at the Whitebeard in front of him. The pressure in his heart was huge, and the heavy pressure made his face go crazy. Chapter 436-Whitebeard and Blackbeard. And LT, 39 and GT. Blackbeard immediately fled back, his eyes were hard to hide, looking at the Whitebeard in front of him. The pressure in his heart was huge, and the heavy pressure made his face go crazy. Whitebeard, you should have died a long time ago. The power of the dark fruit in Blackbeard's hands continued to stimulate, and he looked crazy and roared. He was in a state of embarrassment, and he was severely injured by Whitebeard in just one encounter. This made his fear infinitely magnified. If Whitebeard was in its heyday, what would the result of his meeting with the other party be? I'm afraid, in one face-to-face, he will be killed in seconds. Thinking of this, he looked at Whitebeard's eyes more and more greedy. In his eyes, it is not unreasonable to regard it as the strongest devil fruit in the world. Seeing such a tyrannical power of Whitebeard, he was heartbroken. Shake the fruit. Gotta get it, gotta get it. His eyes shone brightly, and his eyes became very exciting, especially after seeing the terrifying power brought by the Whitebeard Junjun fruit. He was moved. The other side. Seeing Blackbeard besieging Whitebeard, Marco and the group of pirates behind him were full of anger and shouted angrily. Tiki, you traitor, you dare to do something to your father, I will kill you with 1,000 cuts. Damn traitor, eat inside and out. Is this what he planned early in the morning? The purpose is to kill Dad. No wonder he sent Ace to the Navy headquarters. Quote. A group of pirates were furious, but they could only watch Whitebeard be besieged by Blackbeard and others at the edge of the other half, Marin Fando. Their hearts were bleeding and the pain was unbearable. Their most respected father, who was beaten like this, with scars all over his body, was on the verge of death. How could they not be angry? Dad. The captains such as Marco, Diamond Yoja, Foil Bista, etc., all looked at Whitebeard's stalwart back. Their lips moved slightly, and it was difficult to describe their mood at the moment. There was also the black beard that appeared dark all over the body, and that wild smile appeared in their sight. Whitebeard, go to hell. Blackbeard grinned and burst into another swift attack. Suddenly, Whitebeard opened his eyes again and stared at Blackbeard Titch. Under Whitebeard's eyes, Blackbeard's footsteps stopped abruptly. He didn't dare to advance an inch, and his expression could not be concealed in horror. Isn't it dead yet? Blackbeard's lips trembled, his expression full of shock. What a tenacious vitality this is. Step by step, he and his companions gradually approached Whitebeard's position. It's definitely not you. In vain. Whitebeard made a sound, which was extremely loud and passed around. The Blackbeard pirates and the others were all startled, their faces filled with fear. This monster is not dead yet. Blackbeard was so frightened that he slumped on the ground. He quickly took out the gun from his waist and shot in the direction of Whitebeard. At the same time, the crew next to him also launched an attack. Boom, boom, boom. Bullets pierced through the air and pierced through Whitebeard's skin. Blood splashed up and splattered on the ground. After a wave of offensive, Blackbeard and the others stopped their steps, still looking at Whitebeard, who was holding a naginata and standing there with lingering fears. It didn't fall. Blackbeard's lips trembled, his face horrified. Chapter 437 _ The Passage of Time. Even under their fierce attack, Whitebeard still did not fall. What a terrible belief this is. Ship, Captain. Lafitte was flustered and whispered. Even they were startled. Looking at the scars on Whitebeard's body, they admitted that if it were them, they would have died a long time ago. But Whitebeard did not, and still stood. The scene was so eerie that his scalp was numb. Are you dead? Blackbeard was also startled and asked in a low voice. I don't know. The rest of the staff shook their heads and did not dare to approach. Not far away. The warring states on the high platform, looking at the appearance of the Whitebeard, showed a sigh on his face. Even an opponent, but Whitebeard is a worthy opponent. The passing of an era. The corners of his mouth moved slightly, and he said with emotion. However, he calmed down a little, and looked at Blackbeard with a gloomy look. What is the purpose of this group of guys? 083, standing with Whitebeard, and fell silent. The old rivals of the year left one by one. Coupled with the departure of his relatives, he has mixed feelings, which is indescribable. Dad. Countless pirates looked at the standing figure of Whitebeard, their mood was sour, and their eyes were red. Position directly in front. Blackbeard and the others tried to walk forward, approaching Whitebeard step by step. Sudden. To everyone's surprise, Whitebeard opened his eyes again. Gollum. Blackbeard swallowed his saliva, stopped, and slumped on the ground. Like a group of crew members beside him, he was completely startled. What kind of life force can not die like this? They have no words to describe the mood at the moment. It's definitely not you. Whitebeard's piercing eyes fixed on Blackbeard's body and shouted, "The man Roger is waiting for. At least it won't be you, Titch." Just like there are people who can inherit Roger's will, there will be someone who inherits Ace's will one day, even if the bloodline is cut off. Their flames will not be extinguished, and they have been inherited from the distant past like this, and one day in the future, there will be people who can carry the centuries of history and challenge the world. After a few words, everyone in the audience fell into silence. Including the image bugs, they are all conveying Whitebeard's every move. Seeing the scarred, still not dead Whitebeard, even the audience in front of the huge screen was startled and shivered. It is hard to hide the fear of being separated from the screen. Whitebeard, he's not dead yet. Countless people stared blankly at the huge screen. The image of Whitebeard holding a naginata and still standing made everyone feel terrified. There are more people I admire in my heart. Isn't it admirable for someone who is still not dead after such a serious injury? What a tenacious vitality, what a firm will, that he did not close his eyes. You. Blackbeard was paralyzed with fright, his lips trembling. Including the people next to him, they were all looking at the Whitebeard in front of him, motionless. Everyone in the audience stared blankly at the standing Whitebeard. Even the Navy couldn't help but feel a little respect in his heart. This is an opponent and a person to be respected. Is he still not dead? A Navy slumped on the ground, his entire face full of fear. There is really no way. The undead monster has become a nightmare in their hearts and cannot be easily erased. This is the famous Whitebeard. The stalwart figure made them fall into silence. At the same time, the corner of Bybird's mouth moved slightly, looking at the position of the Warring States period, his smile became meaningful. He spoke again, his voice resounding in the sky, and it took a lot of his strength to shout, "Warring States, what your world governments are afraid of will come one day. A huge battle involving the whole world, although I have no interest, but when the treasure was discovered." Speaking of which, Warring States' pupils shrank, and his face suddenly became extremely ugly, his eyes widened, staring at Whitebeard, his eyes emitting bloodshots. The audience was shocked by Whitebeard's words. Silence. Whitebeard's words still echoed in everyone's ears. What exactly does this mean? Chapter 437 _ The Passing of Times. What exactly does this mean? Quick, cut off the image bugs. Sengoku's face changed dramatically, his face full of anxiety, and he roared. What happened next was really serious. To stop these words from spreading. However, it was too late. Whitebeard continued, "At that time, the world will be turned upside down. It will, someone will find it, and that day will come." Goo la 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 la. Whitebeard laughed, took a deep breath, recalled what Roger looked like, and shouted, "One Piece. It's real." This sentence made everyone quiet down. On the huge venue, these words were constantly echoed. Silent. No movement. Everyone was shocked. Whether it's Shichibukai, the Navy, or Blackbeard, the remaining members of the Whitebeard pirates. But everyone present heard this loud voice in their ears. Including the image worm, let alone this picture and the voice of Whitebeard. On the high platform. Damn Whitebeard. Warring States' face, cursed loudly, his face was extremely gloomy. The scene he didn't want to see the most happened. However, this sentence is in the only remaining image worm. Spread this sentence all over the sea. Everyone, when they heard this sentence, their expressions were stunned, their mouths were open, and they could not speak. All the pirates are boiling with enthusiasm. Whitebeard, he actually said that. One Piece, does it exist? OMG. What came out of Whitebeard's mouth is absolutely true. He was the one who was closest to this secret back then. He absolutely knew the truth of the matter. Quote. Countless pirates were boiling with excitement. Among them, countless pirates who were ready to go to sea, because of these words, aroused the blood in their hearts, and embarked on the journey of the sea without hesitation. This Marine Fando's navy, dumbfounded, their lips trembling. It is conceivable how terrifying the influence of the words that came out of Whitebeard's mouth. This is equivalent to a fuse, making the sea explode again and boil. Is that what you are for, Whitebeard? Sengoku gritted his teeth, stared at the standing Whitebeard, and cursed. He can already predict how turbulent the next sea area will be. It's incredible, thief, ha ha ha. Blackbeard was stunned for a moment, then laughed out loud. In the Sea of Chiwu, Moonlight Mariah, Doflamingo and others witnessed the scene of Whitebeard's words, and their expressions became very exciting. This is really explosive news. It is conceivable that the sea will be more dangerous in the future. I can already predict how many pirates will go out to sea after this word spreads. Quote. Everyone was affected by Whitebeard's words. At this time, Whitebeard looked back at the many pirates behind him. His mood surged and turned into endless sighs. Forgive me, sons, I left a heinous bastard to the world. 0.8 inches but, I got everything from you. Now, I'll stop here, what a beautiful sailing trip, I got everything. Thank you, and farewell, sons. Whitebeard's eyes were lost, and he recalled various times with his sons in the past. All that time was really fun. This is the happiness he seeks. Simple as that, yet very fulfilling. With a nostalgic smile on the corner of his mouth, he slowly closed his eyes with a smile on his face. This is also officially announced. Whitebeard completely left this world. The undead monster, the nightmare in everyone's heart. The last remaining vitality just disappeared. Even if you die. He left an unforgettable mark on the world. His last words will also usher in a new era of movement. And he, who is dead at this moment, is still standing, not falling. He held the naginata, motionless, like an eternal god of war. And LT, 42 and GT. Chapter 438-Devour Fruit. This time, are you dead? The corners of Blackbeard's mouth moved slightly, and he said uncertainly. He thought that Whitebeard had died too many times, but in the end the other party still didn't die, which made a psychological shadow in his heart, and he didn't dare to believe too much in what he saw. I don't know. The rest of the companions shook their heads and whispered. They were also stunned by the scene of Whitebeard coming back to life. Especially when they saw the Whitebeard in front, holding a naginata and still standing, they felt a chill in their hearts. To even die standing up, what a terrifying picture. Silence. Everyone looked at the white-bearded figure standing in front of them. Especially the remarks just now, everyone present was really shocked. Dad. Countless people looked at the white-beard standing figure, tears streaming down their faces, their eyes were red, and the tears fell to the ground along the trajectory, and their emotions were indescribable. Marco, Diamond Yoja, Foil Beasta, and a group of members of the Whitebeard pirates behind them were all very sad, gritted their teeth, and looked heavy. The entire Whitebeard pirates were founded around Whitebeard alone. Anyone can be without it, but without Whitebeard, this pirate group will lose the meaning and deterrent power of the original 19. In order for us to return to the New World safely, Dad chose to be alone and resist all the navies ahead. We must not fail Dad's expectations. Marco took a deep breath, his tone was firm, and he said solemnly. That's right. Diamond Yoja, Foil Beasta and others also nodded and said without hesitation. It's just, the corpses of Dad and Ace. A pirate hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice. Suddenly, everyone fell into silence. If the corpse can't be buried, wouldn't even Whitebeard's last dignity be preserved? This result is absolutely unbearable for them. On the high platform in front, Warring States looked at the figure standing with white beard. His face was expressionless and his face was ashen. Damn white beard, before he died, he had to bring such a huge trouble to the Navy. He can imagine how much trouble there will be in the next sea area. However, today's battle is coming to an end. Just, Blackbeard, what is he doing? Warring States raised his brows, looked at the group of people in front of Blackbeard, and said in a low voice. He really couldn't figure it out. Why did Blackbeard appear at this time? Kill Whitebeard. Just for this reason, it still doesn't make sense. Front. In everyone's sight. I see. Blackbeard looked at the figure of Whitebeard in front of him, summoned up his courage, walked straight ahead, wandered around for a while, and after confirming that Whitebeard had been killed, he breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, this devil fruit belongs to me. Blackbeard couldn't hide his excitement, his face full of excitement, said. Looking at the dead body of Whitebeard, but still standing, thick greed flashed in his eyes. This devil fruit is the devil fruit he wanted to get after he got the dark fruit, thinking about it day and night. At the same time, it is also the strongest devil fruit in his opinion. Help me block the others and keep them out of the way. Blackbeard instructed Shiryu of the Rain and the others beside him. Got it. The rest nodded and looked around quickly to prevent the rest of them from approaching here. Chapter 438-Devour Fruit. And LT, 43 and GT. The rest nodded and looked around quickly to prevent the rest of them from approaching here. At this time, Blackbeard's hands appeared black substance, and it slammed over the body of Whitebeard in front of him, and a layer of shady appeared, covering both him and Whitebeard. From the outside world, only a black screen can be seen, and Blackbeard's actions cannot be clearly seen. What is he doing? Marco raised his brows, gritted his teeth and shouted, "This fellow Titch, what do you want to do with Dad's corpse? Damn it. Titch, the traitor, what is he doing to the body of Dad? Damn it, I hate myself for being powerless." A group of pirates gritted their teeth and shouted. Seeing that the Blackbeard covered the Whitebeard together, their hearts were full of irritability. Even Sengoku was taken aback by Blackbeard's actions. What's the situation? What is the purpose of Blackbeard's move? Is there anything precious about Whitebeard's corpse? In other words, what did Blackbeard want to do with Whitebeard's corpse? There is no explanation for all of this. But he can be sure that it is all Blackbeard's plan should be at this moment. The other party appeared to fight with Whitebeard, and the purpose was to get Whitebeard's corpse. This point, the Warring States can be 100% sure. But the final result, what kind of changes will be brought to Blackbeard, this is not something that Warring States can figure out. We can only wait and see the changes of Blackbeard after everything is over. Silence. The audience stared blankly at the direction of the Blackbeard pirates. That black curtain shrouded the Blackbeard and the Whitebeard. Such a scene made Marco and the others impatient and cursed loudly. But, to no avail. Are you going to start? Liang's eyes flickered, looking at the scene of the Blackbeard in front of him, and said lightly. I didn't expect that Whitebeard actually died. Hancock said softly with a bit of emotion on his pretty face. The famous Whitebeard died in Marin Fando. Moreover, 330 was killed by his own son Blackbeard himself, which is undoubtedly a kind of irony. Likewise, this result was completely unpredictable for Hancock. Without seeing the result, she definitely couldn't have predicted this scene just by relying on the picture just now. So, Liang hugged Hancock, felt the soft touch, and smiled. Everything is unpredictable. For example, the result of the battlefield now. If you don't see the result, can you think of it? Yeah. Hancock shook his hair gently and nodded. She looked at the Blackbeard in front of her and asked subconsciously, what is he doing? A very wonderful thing. Do you believe that someone in this world can have two devil fruits? Liang's eyes flashed, recalling the secret that Blackbeard explained to him back then, and smiled. One person has two devil fruits. That's impossible. Hancock shook his head without thinking. This was concluded a long time ago. Scientists have also come to a conclusion that it is impossible for a person to have two devil fruits. Every devil fruit contains a devil, and two devils are incompatible. When two demons coexist, they fight. One must die before giving up. And the person who ate two devil fruits would also die directly because of the battle between the two devils. NLT, 44 and GT. Chapter 439_Shake Fruit and Dark Fruit. Therefore, when he heard Li Ang's words, Hancock subconsciously shook his head and denied it. In her philosophy, there is no one who can have two devil fruits. Looking at the whole world, such a person does not exist. Therefore, Hancock can be sure in his heart that a person who can possess the ability of two devil fruits at the same time is theoretically impossible. Once swallowed two devil fruits, the whole person will die violently. This will make many people fear it. It's not an example of someone who didn't eat two devil fruits, but they would all die directly in the end. No matter how strong the strength is, it cannot change this fact. This is an accurate conclusion drawn from countless practical cases. Basically, people in the whole world agree with this conclusion. Not necessarily. Li Ang shook his head, smelling the direction of Hancock's body, and smiled. Not necessarily. Hancock's beautiful eyes flashed and he asked, could it be that there are people in this world who have the power of two devil fruits? Next, you can see. Corners of Li Ang's mouth twitched slightly, and he smiled faintly, looking at the battlefield ahead. Soon, this person will appear. He has two kinds of fruit abilities, and he has to be believed. Meaning, this person is Titch the Blackbeard. Hancock's pretty face was a little moved, and he blurted out. It's him. Li Ang nodded, and Hancock's eyes were fixed on the black screen of the Blackbeard in front of him, waiting quietly, and the next scene was about to set off a huge wave again. One person has the ability to have two devil fruits. Such a thing directly subverts the results that scientists have been studying for many years. Well, here comes the question. How did Blackbeard do it? At this point, Blackbeard directly told Li Ang the secret because of his life. That is to say, Li Ang can also do it, possessing the ability of two devil fruits. But for him, the power of the devil fruit is useless. Even if he doesn't have a devil fruit now, he still possesses terrifying power. If you add the devil fruit, it will only become a burden to him. Back then, he was only out of curiosity before threatening Blackbeard to tell the secret. When he really knows the secret, he may not necessarily implement it, which is completely unnecessary. In the battlefield ahead, the ground cracked, and there was smoke everywhere. Cracks were cracked open, and there were thousands of holes. The huge Marin Fando, and a terrifying crack, divided it into two halves. In the normal position, a group of members of the Whitebeard pirates stood, staring in the direction of Blackbeard, full of anger and scolding. The other side. At the edge, the Blackbeard pirates and others were left, all surrounding Blackbeard, always preventing the Navy or pirates from suddenly attacking. Blackbeard's current process is quite solemn. If something goes wrong, not only will the secret be exposed, but there is no guarantee that this move will be successful. In this way, the Blackbeard would fall short. It is necessary to prevent anyone from approaching. Shiliu of the Rain frowned, a cigarette hanging from the corner of his mouth, holding a famous knife, and said coldly. The rest of the people were silent, but they all surrounded them, blocking all those who tried to get close. The darkness is constantly changing. A long time. Finally, the dark curtain was lifted by a light. The scene inside is gradually presented in everyone's sight. Whitebeard stood still, holding the Naginata sword, as always, with his eyes slightly closed. Position next to you. Blackbeard was smiling and laughed loudly, thief ha 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 ha. This Lang Lang's laughter came out, echoed around, and lingered in everyone's ears. Chapter 439_Junjun Fruit and Dark Fruit. NLT, 45 and GT. This Lang Lang's laughter came out, echoed around, and lingered in everyone's ears. Finally, let him succeed. Captain, did you succeed? Bashar's eyes flickered, and he asked quickly. Of course. Blackbeard nodded, his eyes couldn't hide the excitement, said. After he finished speaking, he looked at his left hand in front of everyone and clenched his fist tightly. Gradually, a white halo appeared on the fist of the left hand. At the right hand position, a mass of black matter emerged. The two devil fruits are equal to each other, and there is absolutely no so-called sudden death. The two demons coexisted. This scene shocked everyone present. Click. Blackbeard smashed his left hand to the side, directly cracking the atmosphere, leaving a trail of traces. This crisp sound spread out, making everyone look dumbfounded, their lips trembling and their throats dry, as if they had seen something extremely shocking. Blackbeard, he also broke the atmosphere. A Navy's lips trembled and said with a face full of horror. His right hand has the ability of the dark fruit, and his left hand has the ability to shake the fruit. My God. That is to say, he alone has two completely different devil fruit abilities. This is obviously unscientific. Didn't Mr. Vegapunk say that no one in the world can swallow two devil fruits? However, how do you explain the black beard in front of you? The biggest reason is what he did just now. What did he do when he wrapped him in the white beard just now? Quote. Numerous navies froze, their faces stunned and dumbfounded. Even Chiwahai was shocked. Not far away. Marco and the others looked at Blackbeard's left hand, the familiar power, their eyes widened, their expressions filled with disbelief and deep shock. This is Dad's fruit ability. Diamond Yoja's lips trembled and questioned. He rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't wrong. Did he actually take away Dad's ability? How did he have the ability to have two kinds of fruit alone? Moreover, he can directly strip the power of the devil fruit from the human body. Such power is too terrifying. Damn Titch, this traitor, he doesn't deserve the fruit ability of Dad. How did he do this? It's terrifying. Simply, it subverts my understanding of devil fruit. It turns out that one person can really have two different devil fruit abilities. Quote. Many pirates also raised doubts in their hearts, and their faces were puzzled. But what they couldn't hide was their anger at Blackbeard. Seeing that the shocking fruit of their most respected father, Joudas, was taken away by Titch, a traitor, how could they endure such a thing happening? This is definitely a great insult to Whitebeard. The shaking fruit, in their minds, represents the white-bearded father. However, it was robbed by Blackbeard Tiki. How could they swallow this bad breath? On the high platform, Warring States looked at Blackbeard, frowned, and pondered. How did you do it? He couldn't figure out how Blackbeard did it and took away the Junjun fruit. This is not a complete devil fruit. Rather, it is the fruit ability that has been fused into the body after it has been taken by humans. Even so, is it still possible to forcibly deprive the devil fruit in the human body? Besides, more importantly, how can one person possess the power of two devil fruits? These 2 points are the huge doubts that the Warring States period is puzzled by, and it is completely impossible to guess the exact answer. Chapter 440 Blackbeard and the Navy Headquarters. Seeing the white halo emerging from Blackbeard's left hand, hitting the air and cracking the atmosphere, this scene is truly frightening. Especially in Blackbeard's right hand, there are also black masses. Obviously, this is another ability possessed by another devil fruit. One person has two completely different devil fruits at the same time. The Warring States period has lived for most of his life, and he has seen countless big scenes as a naval marshal, but he has never seen a person like Blackbeard. One person has two devil fruits. Aokiji's eyes flickered, looking at the Blackbeard in front of him, and said solemnly. Even he was terrified. I had never heard of such a thing, it happened right in front of my eyes. I'm afraid, this is the only person in the world who has the ability of two kinds of devil fruits. What kind of measures did the other party take to achieve it? Thief, ha 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 ha. Blackbeard laughed loudly, feeling the terrifying power contained in his left hand, and his excitement made him speechless and his blood boiled. The left hand shakes the fruit, the right hand darkens the fruit. This is his greatest strength right now. He stared at the half-crippled Malinfando in front of him, his eyes flashed a little, and he wanted to try to see how strong he was now. And now the Navy headquarters, which has been beaten beyond recognition, is the best object for him to try his strength. Empty shock. 747 Blackbeard's mouth was slightly upturned, with a thick smile on his face, his left hand tapped in the air, bringing a crisp and pleasant sound. Click. The atmosphere cracked. The shocking power enveloped Malinfando in front of him. Not good. The face of the Warring States changed slightly, his eyes popped, and he turned into a big Buddha with golden light all over his body, and his hands violently attacked in the direction of Blackbeard. Buddha's impact. A shocking force emerged from the palm of his hand, sweeping all areas in front of him. On the front, it collided with Blackbeard's shock. Boom. A terrifying voice resounded spontaneously, resounding through the sky. Where the Warring States stood, everything was destroyed by this shaking force. At the same time, Blackbeard's feet also collapsed into a huge pit. The strength of the two is equal, and Blackbeard looked at his left hand with excitement. This is the power he desires the most. The terrifying power of the Junjun fruit did not disappoint him. Too strong. As expected of Whitebeard's ability, it is simply too strong. Blackbeard, you bastard. Sengoku's face was gloomy, BJCI, his voice was hoarse, and said. At the same time, Garp also stood up, his fists covering the armed color domineering, flashing directly beside Blackbeard, expressionless, with a ruthless punch, slammed down. Boom. Blackbeard's eyes are quick and his hands are quick, and his right hand activates the ability of the dark fruit, trying to block Garp's attack. The two collided, and Blackbeard felt an indomitable force that was hitting his body. His face changed slightly, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. At the same time, facing the siege of two legendary navies. I have to say, I am really honored. Blackbeard Lang laughed, completely unscrupulous. At present, he has just controlled the power of the Junjun fruit, and he has not been able to fully erupt the power of the Junjun fruit. However, it was just like that, and he was quite confident in his heart. What to fear? He is a man with two devil fruits. Captain. Bassos, Poison Q and others came one after another, trying to block Garp. With an expressionless face, Garp blasted out with a punch, directly hitting all of Blackbeard's crew. Chapter 440-Blackbeard and the Navy Headquarters. NLT, 47 and GT. With an expressionless face, Garp blasted out with a punch, directly hitting all of Blackbeard's crew. Only Shiryu of the Rain could compete a little bit, but he was quickly defeated by Garp by more than 10 meters, rubbing against the ground, very embarrassed. Earthquake. Blackbeard quickly took a few steps back, grinning. His left hand smashed the atmosphere, and a sharp sound came out, and a tyrannical force emerged, sweeping the crowd of the surrounding navy. Boom. The ground trembled, and cracks appeared. Ah! Countless navy wailed, shrouded in this power, and flew high into the sky. Blackbeard. Warring States' pupils shrank, his face full of anger, and he shouted loudly. The golden Buddha on his entire body flashed with golden light, and a tyrannical shock wave rushed to the position of Blackbeard. Facing the attack of the Warring States period, Blackbeard's expression remained unchanged. He squeezed the white halo with his left hand, and shouted, "Air shock." Boom. The two fought together again, but neither lost the other. Garp also appeared, seeing Blackbeard wantonly attacking the navy, making his face gloomy and ugly. His fists with a terrifying armed color, directly hit Blackbeard's chest. Boom. Blackbeard vomited blood, rolled around on the ground several times, and stood up again with a smile, without any sense of tension. He had just mastered 2 devil fruits, and he was in a state of self-confidence. How could he fear the enemy? No one can make him fear. He is confident that his strength has already stood on the top. The two devil fruits that he thought were the most perfect were completely under his control, and his self-confidence also emerged spontaneously. Blackbeard, what are you doing? Warring State's eyes were low and he shouted loudly. It's nothing, I just want to try it out, just shake the power of the fruit. Blackbeard smiled lightly and glanced at the warships in the sea next to him, his face expressionless. A white halo appeared on his left hand, and he clenched his fist. See this scene. Warring State's pupils shrank, and there was an ominous premonition in his heart, and he shouted, the impact of the Buddha. He aimed his palms in the direction of Blackbeard, and the shock wave attacked. Blackbeard jumped up, dodged the blow, and tapped the air with his left hand. Click. The atmosphere cracked. He grinned, hi Jen. Whoa. The sea boiled, and waves of waves swept the audience. All warships on the sea were hit by an unprecedented horrific disaster. The sea splashed dozens of meters above the sky, as if a tsunami had been generated, and the waves rushed around. And some of the navy on the warship looked at the changes in the sea with fear, and some were directly shot out and fell into the sea. In an instant, several dozen of the warships sank. Under the terrible attack of Blackbeard, several warships and all the navies above were destroyed directly. Damn. Carp raised his brows and stared coldly at Blackbeard. The other party really has completely inherited the ability of Whitebeard. But you're never a Whitebeard. Carp took a deep breath, opened his mouth slowly, and said meaningfully. The shaking fruit appeared countless times. However, in the sea, I just remembered the man Whitebeard. It's not that the Junjun fruit made Whitebeard, but that the Whitebeard made the Junjun fruit's reputation spread across the sea. Fruit ability does not mean everything. Mighty, always look at the person who holds the devil fruit.